This program deals with themes of an adult nature and is intended for a mature audience.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on the KTPF Community Talk Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for our new weekly radio shows. To accompany the KTPF Community Talk Show, we now have our own free magazine to view online or download for free. Visit our website for more details. Also, the KTPF Community Talk Show is supported by Phenomenon Magazine and Beyond Parazine, available online now.
The KTPF Community Talk Show is sponsored by Dragonos Castle, South Wales, one of the most haunted castles in Wales. For more information on ghostly and ghastly events, including Fright Nights, all-night investigations and hen parties, visit www.mosthauntedcastle.com.
The comments and views expressed on the KTPF Community Talk Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the views of ourselves or of our sponsors.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
They've landed.
You're in the right place. Online, on the web, and on air. All over the world.
Talk Radio.
You hear us, we hear you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the KTPF Community Talk Show, live from Manchester on www.ktpf.co.uk. My name's Suzanne.
And I'm Steve.
And over in Essex again is...
Oh, yes, back home. Hi, it's Andy. Hello.
And we're here keeping the paranormal friendly, as always, on a Sunday evening with you and our special guest. We bring you a relaxed and show with no pressure to just sit back with your favourite beverage and listen whilst we talk about various topics from cryptozoology to UFOs and share information, advice and most importantly friendship. Remember, collaboration, not competition. This show incorporates a wide spectrum within this fascinating subject of the paranormal. So if you have any questions, then you can use the live interactive chat room or Skype in and speak directly to our guest by adding the ktpf.paranormal show. Later, we will have the rundown of this month's events, or the events coming up for April now, provided by our sister site at paranormaleventsforyou.com. And I'd just like to acknowledge those that are in the chat room. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy the show. And also, later on, you'll be hearing this back on our radio replay. So hello to all you YouTube channel listeners. Nice to know that you're out there. Well, what have we got on tonight? Just to let you know. Tonight we will be talking about paranormal interactions with Paul Kimball from Nova Scotia, Halifax in Nova Scotia in Canada. Author of The Other Side of Truth, The Paranormal, The Art of the Imagination and the Human Condition. Paul has a rather unique outlook on the paranormal, and tonight he will share some of his theories that many strange experiences could be interactions with advanced non-human intelligence, including ghosts, time travelers and aliens. I'm really tongue twisted tonight for some reason.
Just a bit.
I don't know why. So that's what we've got on tonight. Andy, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Yes, eventless journey home, listening back to last week's show, which is rather enjoyable, listening to us talking about the history of your little radio station, which I've hitherto come on board, and rereading the magazine the umpteenth time, making sure there's no errors, and I still couldn't find any, so I'm quite pleased with that.
Yes.
Other than that, it's been fine and dandy down here, down south. It's been quite mild, and I've been working with my therapy work as usual. Other than that, not much else really.
Yeah.
And talking about the subject of magazines, the KTPF magazine is out now, and you can either read online or download your own copy via our website here at www.ktpf.co.uk. Just hit online magazine, which you will find on our menu bar or on the side panel on the right hand side.
Yes, it's been really good as well. There are several places you can download it, but just directly from the site, we've had 400, over 400 people actually go onto the page to
have a look.
Just have a look at the magazine.
Yes, and just to give you an idea of the comments we've been getting back, if you'd just bear with me a moment while I click on here. We've had a couple of reviews of the magazine. One was good magazine, nice clean layout, well thought out and sensibly packed. There was also really impressed. You could probably sell it in W.H. Smith's. It looks very professional. That was from Richard Thomas. And great show, and thank you so much for producing this KTPF magazine and making it available for free. And that was a comment that was put on our YouTube page. I think it was by Mark Horrett, something like that. I can't remember who said the first one, but I will find out for you. Bear with me. The first one was actually a comment by, she says, let me just double check. Jonathan Thorpe, that's what he said. Good magazine, nice clean layout, well thought out and sensibly packed. So we're getting some good reviews on it, so that's good, isn't it, Andy?
Indeed, yes. Nice to know that people are actually reading the thing.
Yes, so that's good. Right, Steve, what we got in the observations this week?
Observations. Oh, there you go. There's the first one. All loaded up, ready to go. It's a little bit harrowing, this one.
Harrowing?
Harrowing, yes.
Harrowing.
Watch priest perform exorcism on screaming woman who was possessed by the devil.
Oh, yes. Have you seen this video?
Locals say the 22-year-old woman was a good girl who turned bad when the devil possessed her. This rare and disturbing footage has been released of a woman writhing around on the floor and screaming as an exorcism is performed on her in Argentina. 22-year-old woman, identified only by her first name of Laura, is pinned to the ground as Bishop Manuel Akuma, 52, drives the devil spirits out of her. As she screams, "No, no," the spirits... Oh, enough. Should I say that one? Yes, why not? No, no, and the spirits whore once one of the women holding her down, Bishop Akuna, is heard muttering, "Leave, leave her now." Before the exorcism, locals gathered at the Lutheran Charismatic Church in the capital of Buenos Aires, praying for her soul and redemption. Bishop Acuna told them the demon exists. He's not an idea. He's not a theory. He's not something abstract. The devil is a personality and therefore has a strategy. We are talking about something terrifying, a fallen angel. The devil is not a metaphor. The devil is something real that Jesus Christ faced. The devil looks for the perdition of the human being, and for this he will use any possible evil instrument. Laura was then led into a chamber where churches helped her on the ground. A local man, Augustus Amada Aravello, 32, who had gone to pray for her, said, "We could hear her screaming and crying, and we prayed for her deliverance. She was a good girl that turned bad when the devil possessed her. She had to be exorcised. She had to be free." The exorcism comes to an end as she suddenly gives a strangled cry and then suddenly closes her eyes and falls back, exhausted, wiping away tears as the priest once again makes the sign of a cross over her body. Bishop Acuna said, "Thank you, we've recovered a daughter of God." You haven't seen a major exorcism. This was a group of demons similar to the ones that Jesus faced. Her delivery is God's gift for us today.
That was actually in the Irish Mirror, and I'm half expecting it to be taken down, to be honest with you, if you see the video, because it's not the sort of thing I think that the papers normally show, is it really?
It's not usually, no. You know a little bit of these things, Andy. What do you think?
I'm not sure I'd really want to comment on what I'm seeing here. This is utterly ridiculous.
It is, isn't it? But you would have thought that they would actually get told to pull it down, whether it's true or not.
I wouldn't be surprised under a viral video for some forthcoming film. But no, I would say that you can't conclude anything from that. These are the same spirits that possess Jesus. How would you know that?
Well, this is it. It is quite a crude video, isn't it? Really, I think it shows more than what it should. To be honest with you.
Yeah, well, she's almost losing the top there for one point, but no, I think it's just ridiculous. I mean, if you want to believe you're being possessed by the devil, you're going to behave accordingly. And if it's a deep held belief that you have, etc., etc., we can fool ourselves into believing anything. We know that from people we talk to sometimes. But to me, no, it's not proof of anything other than this woman believed she was possessed by the devil and believed that church exorcism was going to work on her. Of course she does. Interesting, it's a Catholic country again. So Catholic-based ideas again. So, no.
Well, I believe we're staying with the Irish Mirror then, Steve.
It goes with another religious story. Miracle face of Jesus appears in South American landslide. To me, very, very much a piece of pareidolia, but it does seem to resemble a face of sorts. An image of Jesus is believed by worshippers to have appeared following a landslide. The apparition is attracting hundreds of visitors to the San Francisco area of Putumayo, Colombia, since Saturday. Some local landowners are cashing in on the miracle by charging visitors for access to view the figure. It has been reported. Police presence has also been necessary to manage the crowds. If you believe in Jesus, you will see your image. Exima Rosara Aranga, one of many people who have come to the site to photograph the mountain, told Altiepo.com. People have taken to Twitter to express their amazement and disbelief. Miracles or coincidence? Asked one person, and I ask you guys the same thing. What do you think?
Yes.
The bit that gets me there is if you believe in Jesus, you will see the image.
Of course you do. If you believe in
see it anyway.
It says everything. yeah. I mean, we see a face.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can see that it could be just the way the earth's fallen and stuff like that. So it's nothing miraculous. It just happens. But it's just if you believe in Jesus, you will see the face.
I can tell you a little story actually.
So do the people that don't believe in Jesus not see it?
Okay, what's this story, Andy?
It was I wish I could find it. I just had a quick scan around. I couldn't find it, but it's basically a true story about a billboard in America.
Yeah.
In the deep South Bible Belt area that had been hit by a rainstorm, partly washing off the whitewash that was all over it, and there was a face emerging from it that people believed was the face of Jesus. It was photographed. Actually, I can't find it. I'll have another look. But it was photographed, and people would see it and believe, yes, it was the face of Jesus, and there was a little gathering around it in Cowns, a place nearby, that it somehow had formed in the whitewash as it had been washed away by the rain. Anyway, the rain went on another day, washed more off, and it seemed more defined, a definite face. And people gathered around it again and put more candles. And then another day, about a week later, it rained heavily again and washed all the whitewash off. It was the country singer Willie Nelson, a poster of his new album. And if you look at a picture of Willie Nelson, you can see he's got the beard and the hair, so he would look like Jesus. But in the whitewashed picture, he looked like it was Jesus. But it was Willie Nelson. Yeah. So there you go.
Good old Willie.
Yes. I don't all laugh at once. Did you see the paper towel one as well that's at the bottom of the page there?
Pardon?
There's one of the view gallery. There's a paper towel one, the very first one.
Oh, yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
Jesus appears on paper. That looks like John Lennon to me.
It's like a woman, yeah.
It's more like John Lennon than Jesus.
Yeah, there's quite a few there, isn't there, in cheese and stuff.
Yeah, people see a lot of things that they want to see, I think.
So down to pareidolia again, isn't it?
Mostly, yeah. Here we go. 9/11 workers say they were visited by a female ghost while sifting through debris. After the September the 11th attacks levelled at the World Trade Center, NYPD Sergeant Frank Mera spent a year searching through the rubble. In his new book, From Landfill to Hallowed Ground, the now retired cop details the harrowing things he saw while searching through what was left of the Twin Towers at the Fresh Kills land site in Staten Island. From 2001 to 2002, Mera, along with fellow volunteers, found the remains of 1,200 people who had tragically perished alongside with 54,000 items left behind. but it was the personal effects that stuck with Mara the most. He says, while working on the hill, he was mostly struck by the appearance of a woman dressed like a Red Cross worker from the Second World War. He said this ghostly spirit who visited him multiple times was carrying a tray of sandwiches. I thought she was trying to help us, being first responders. He told the New York Post. He wasn't the only worker who saw this spirit, who a psychic medium explained could have been the soul of a collector, guiding people to the afterlife. According to the New York Post, Mara says that he repressed the memory of her until he was doing research for his book. And a former crime scene detective asked him, you ever hear the stories of the old Red Cross worker trying to serve sandwiches and coffee out to the sifters? And then Mara says, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Mara isn't the only one who claims he saw the interesting image. Some report large black masses, say Mara, who was the supervisor of the World Trade Center vehicle impound section of the landfill. In his book, Mara notes that the landfill became so much more than a place to sort through the wreckage. As time passed, we realized how many people's ashes and DNA still remained at the landfill. It was clear this became a holy ground, a place of rest for many who would never be recovered, a cemetery without tombstones. There you go. There's a story of a spirit trying to help, trying to keep up the spirits of the people that were searching. Very interesting indeed.
Yeah.
It's actually a wonder we're not hearing more stories about ghosts from that area.
Yeah.
I think we will in time.
Yeah. I think it's a bit raw at the moment still, isn't it?
It probably is, but if you think about it, a lot of people died very suddenly.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing tends to leave a heavy trace. Well, here comes our next one. A lot of these are quite short tonight, but here we go. I took this photo while on vacation in Mexico, says Amy. I went to this place where I was able to swim with a guide in a salty river. We got to swim through the caves and vines. While swimming through the caves, I snapped some photos. The caves were pitch black except for some stained glass. When I returned home, I took the camera to have the film developed. When I received the photos, I couldn't believe my eyes. There were several black figures floating above the water. Amy testifies that she did not see these black figures when she took the photo, which represents somewhat of a mystery. Is it some kind of camera anomaly, photo artifact, or smudges on the lens? Amy says that there were vines in the cave. Is that what we're seeing in some distorted way? Are the objects just something that Amy did not see at the time? Or could these strange figures be cave-dwelling spirits? What do you think, guys? It's an interesting photograph. I have seen it before.
Like stains on the wall to me.
Yeah.
It's quite possible.
Like metal shaft sticking out, and it's like the rusting underneath as it disintegrates. Again, you can't really tell much. There's no sort of shape or scale. We can see obviously the water's edge, and is that a large boulder in the foreground, or is it just straight across one wall? It's really hard to tell.
There's not really a point of reference, is there?
No, exactly. It does make it a little difficult to tell what else we're looking at.
But it makes for good reading.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The lady in pink is said to walk the hallways of the Wayne County Courthouse in Worcester, Ohio. And this security camera picture and video might be evidence of the fact. I looked at the monitor, and sure enough, right down the hall from where I was standing, there was a figure in a reddish pink hue. Just right down the hall, said Commons Police Court Administrator James Fox. I looked down the hallway and nobody was there. And I looked back at the screen and there was definitely a figure. Spooky figures in the courthouse.
That is a short one.
I think I'm going to go even shorter in a minute. This next one's even shorter.
Oh, you got more?
I got more. I told you
Okay.
I have about 7, but most of them are quite short.
Okay. What's next?
This is another one of them Google ones. Google Street Maps has captured all kinds of weird things, but this image taken on A5 highway near Walensee, Switzerland, contains images that some say look heavenly figures, possibly
Oh.
Jesus and Mary up in the clouds. Look more like a mountain to me, but
Yes, if you look at the bottom, you can see the line of the beside the curb. It's got a chink in it, and the chink goes straight up to where that is. So it's obviously just two images getting overlaid incorrectly. Something that was there and then wasn't there.
phew. Hello, Mr. Viscount. He said, panic
Yes.
over, I'm here.
Where's your sick note for last week?
Yes.
And did you read the magazine?
And have you read the magazine?
Here we go. This is one that I did see, and I wasn't sure about doing it, but Andy sent it to me as well, so I thought, why not? Retired Harbour lollipop man Ted Wiseman tells how his deceased wife contacts him through a medium and is over the moon. Henpecked Ted Wiseman got precious little peace from his wife in life, and he's getting even less in her death. For the Hellsarvin pensioner is now being nagged from beyond the grave by fiery Yvonne. And he's over the moon that his wife is still finding time from the other side to give him an ear bashing. Yvonne may have worn the trousers, but that the couple were inseparable. The former lollipop man of Our Lady of Fatima Catholic Primary School in Herborn has even received the hairdryer treatment via a medium. Yvonne issued a very blunt message to her hubby through the clairvoyant. "You're wearing my slippers. Take them off now." Fancy getting that. Yvonne, who died following a stroke last May at the age of 64, adopts a more hands-on approach when it comes to Ted's annoying bedtime habits. Just recently woke him by bellowing, "Stop bloody sniffing!" I was absolutely gobsmacked, said the 79-year-old Ted. That was exactly what she used to say. She also got very irritated when I flicked my fingers or sucked my teeth. When she went off on one, she went blood red, but she never held a grudge. And if we had a bit of a set to, it would be go on for 5 minutes, and then that was it. You'd do that to me, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Come back and give me jip. But there you go, guys. That's it. That's my observations for this week.
I just wondered why I had a picture of him with the washing machine. That was a bit strange.
I don't know. And what was he holding?
Well, it's the thing you put the what's it stuff? You know, the bold aerial liquid stuff goes in that thing. It's like he's
You mean the stuff that they put the washing liquid in?
Yeah, that's it. That's the stuff. It's like someone a strange offering he's making.
Well, I think I can just squeeze in my
Ooh.
Tupeeneth.
Yes.
I hope you're feeling better now then, Viscount. He said he was in hospital. That's why he's not there.
I'm going to put
Go on.
in my Tupeeneth.
Squeeze in your Tupeeneth.
Squeeze in my Tupeeneth. Right. Today, she says, let me just get to it. Today, March the 29th, marks the 67th anniversary of the death of Harry Price, who suffered a massive heart attack at his home in Pulborough, West Sussex, and died almost instantly in 1948. The life of Harry Price began in 1881 in London. His first experiences of psychic activity occurred when he was only 15. He and a friend discovered an old manor house which was believed to be haunted, and with permission they stayed the night in this house to see what they might experience. Harry Price claimed in his autobiography that on that night there was a number of noises which indicated the presence of a ghost, and when Harry tried to take a photo, he overloaded his camera with flash powder and the photo never came out. Regardless of this failure, it was this experience which helped set Harry Price on a path which would dictate his whole life. Price was a controversial figure in his day, and this controversy continued to the present time, as in the years following his death he has been accused, amongst other things, of fraud and deception in several of his investigations, and in his most famous case in particular, the haunting of Borley Rectory, known as the most haunted house in England. You can find out more about his life and his work on harrypricewebsite.co.uk or over at harryprice.co.uk. So there you have it.
Oh, TTGH has put on one of these. One for the ladies, he says. Let's have a look.
Here's one for the ladies. 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, just waiting for this to kick in.
He's got one for the ladies, has he? So,
Oh, there you go.
67 years.
Catholic priest dies for 48 minutes, wakes up claiming God is a woman. And John Michael O'Neill from Massachusetts was said to have been declared dead for more than 48 minutes. He was miraculously revived by medics and had woken up with a shocking revelation that he had gone to heaven and met God. Here we go. 71-year-old Catholic priest John Michael O'Neill has claimed that God is a woman with warm and with a comforting motherly figure. John Michael O'Neill from Massachusetts was said to have been declared dead for more than 48 minutes. I love the way they keep repeating themselves. He was miraculously revived by medics. Yes. Well, I'll leave you guys to read the rest of that.
Well, funnily enough, that was one of the stories I'd highlighted for the show we had Larry Warren on, but Larry was so good, you remember, I didn't do my section because he was so impressed with that. I actually found it on a few weeks back, yeah. God is a woman.
Yep. Maybe the film was right.
Yes.
You never know. So, it's that Dogma.
Oh, yes, that was Alex. What's her name? Alanis Morissette, that was it, yeah.
That's the lady.
Yes.
That'd be
So,
great. It's a funny film, that. It's kind of a comedy, but it's also very viciously violent as well. Quite gory in places. So it's an odd film. It kind of doesn't really fit into any particular genre. It's not really horror. It's not really comedy. It's just damn odd, really.
definitely.
Yes. I'm just wondering what was wrong with the Viscount.
Yes.
Him being in hospital. I see pictures of him on Facebook, all suited and booted.
Here's a quick one where we've got a couple of minutes, guys. What do you think about X-Files coming back? You've seen a little...
It's been a mixed reaction.
Well,
Yeah.
wasn't something I ever watched, really. Having said that, I did see the film.
I must admit, I quite enjoyed the first couple of seasons, but I thought it just dragged a little bit, and I kind of lost interest as well. But I wonder if it's off the back of the popularity of Twin Peaks coming back that they've decided to do this, because that's proved to be very popular. Although at the moment there's been a bit of a delay, unfortunately. Some problems with getting all the cast together for filming, so the Twin Peaks thing might be slightly delayed. But
That was something else I never watched. You had all that uproar about something particular on it. I can't remember what it was. Who killed somebody?
Twin Peaks, it's one of those. It's a very odd. It's an absolute landmark series. It starts off being a fairly conventional mystery crime, mystery murder of the young, called prom queen type character. Laura Palmer is found dead, and the FBI are called in because the body's come across the state lines. So FBI in the form of Del Cooper, but it starts on like a traditional kind of American mystery kind of murder thing, but gradually stranger and stranger things start happening, and it was not planned to begin with. It's going to go weird, but it starts to become a little strange, and you realise there's something not quite right about this town, and some of the characters in there are acting very odd. And gradually, as the whole thing progresses, it's a very complex mystery, and it is very good.
Sounds like an updated version of Peyton Place to me.
Oh no, it's way beyond that. No,
And I do apologise to our younger viewers who won't know what Peyton Place is.
No, actually. But no, it was one of those landmark TV series. The idea that you could put stuff on that didn't make sense straight away, because American audiences, sorry, American guys who are listening, they tend to be like, American TV tends to be in your face as to what's really happening straight away. It's not very mysterious until that point. But then the idea of presenting something that was slowly unravelling itself, like Lost, for example. Most of them had no idea what was going on with Lost most of the time. Yeah. But Lost follows that same kind of theme of.
I got lost with Lost.
Yeah. At least they give it a chance. I mean, a lot of the time they don't give it a chance to actually to kick in before they're cancelling it.
Well, this is the problem. You see, the things that take a little time to unfold don't really fit into the general genre of reveal it all at once type stuff. And say Twin Peaks was the first series to do that, to really gradually unravel the story and sort of in a very complex way, and worked on different levels of, is this real? Is it all in imagination? Are the characters just crazy? Or is it real? Is these things supposed to be really happening? So I absolutely loved it. But to see X-Files coming back, I thought that was. I mean, those that I know that watched it kind of went on too long anyway, because it did go on for 9 seasons, which is longer than a lot of American TV shows last. Well, mostly you get canned after 7. But I don't know. It should be interesting to see if it does come out. I might watch it just purely out of interest.
Okay.
TTTH makes a point there. How are they going to work it? Because nobody was out there looking for ghost monsters and aliens, and now everybody's doing it.
Right. We're going to get this our guest on for now. Is everybody ready for this?
Yes.
Yes. Good. Let's add him to the group conversation and hope it all works. I hate technology.
Usually works.
Let's see whether he's there. Hello.
Hi,
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Although here in the east coast of Canada, we're under about 3 feet of snow. So
Oh God. Well, I hope this connection's going to stay okay.
no, it's a lovely day today. So this, if it had been yesterday or the day before, it might not have been so good. But today it's bright and sunny, and all the snow is on the ground, not in the sky. So.
Oh, brilliant! I've been seeing some photos on Facebook about the snow in Canada and how high it actually can get.
Yeah, well, here in the colonies, I guess there's a reason why you folks, your ancestors, stay in the United Kingdom, and my crazy ancestors traveled across the ocean. Mine had no idea what they were getting into. So I actually lived in Scotland for a year when I was a college student studying, and I remember the only day it snowed, we were at a reading party, which is quintessentially British, at a castle somewhere up in the Highlands, and the 3 Canadians in the room all saw a little bit of snow start to fall. And the British folks there all thought we were mad. We went running out because we hadn't seen snow in months. And we went, oh, it's snowing. And they went, you colonials are crazy. So yeah, there it is. Hello from Canada.
I must admit, though, we've always complained about the snow over here. And it's remarkable how you get it worse in your country. But you know how to deal with it. And whereas with us, any little flake and all of a sudden we get thrown into chaos, don't we?
Closes down.
You seem to be able to adapt to it more. Anyway, let's get on.
It does amuse us to no end when we see stuff like that. So yeah, it's always good to be able to laugh at the mother country.
Yeah, right. Okay, Paul. Now, Paul, you've as you say, you're from Nova Scotia, Halifax. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you've been in the paranormal within the paranormal subject for quite some time, but you've been a musician, a lawyer. I just wondered, what led you to become part of the paranormal? What got you into this world of weird and wonderful?
Well, I don't actually consider myself. I don't even know what being part of the world of the paranormal would be. But I'm a filmmaker by profession now, and I have been since 1999. Right? Yes, 1999. So the first documentary that I ever made, where I directed and produced it and wrote it myself — I had produced a couple others before, but I had never directed one — was a film called Stanton T. Friedman is Real, and it was a biography for Canadian television about the UFO researcher Stan Friedman, who just happens to be my uncle. Right. So I did my first film about a family member, which was a nice way of slowly sliding into the filmmaking world as a director. Yeah. And I'd always had an interest in it in a kid, and I shouldn't say kid, even as a younger person, as a young adult, in a passing way. But I mean, my dad had copies, as most people did in the 1970s, of Chariots. I was going to say Chariots of Fire, sorry, Chariots of the Gods, and a couple of Von Daniken books, the Bermuda Triangle, that sort of thing. And of course, Stan Friedman, being my uncle, I'd seen a couple of his lectures in college and also when I was in high school. And met and talked to him many times at family reunions about UFOs and stuff. So I had a passing interest, but it wasn't really until I did the film on Stan, and then I did, I'm trying to think, I think 4 or 5 more over the next 7 or 8 years that were about the paranormal, whether UFOs or eventually I did a ghost investigating series, that I took more of an interest in it, started to read about it, and but my interest has always been more as an historian. My undergraduate degree, I have an honors degree in history. So I look at it as a cultural phenomenon. I'm actually more interested in the people who study the paranormal, whether they're ufologists or so-called ghost hunters or whatever you want to call them, people who are interested in it, or people who have reported on it or claim to have had experiences, than I suppose I am in the actual phenomena, if such a phenomenon exists itself. Which is not to say I'm not interested in that stuff. It's just, I've moved into more as I've gotten older, looking more at the cultural and social aspects of it. than the actual phenomenon itself, I guess.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, and it probably doesn't.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. Now, obviously, we talked about your ghost cases. Obviously, you did that with Holly Stevens, I believe.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. Holly's a good friend of mine.
I read the book.
Yeah.
And basically,
You should think yourself very, very honoured. It's very rare that she actually bothers to read a book.
Well, I'm sorry I only sent you a PDF copy. It completely, when you invited me on the show, it completely skipped my mind to send a copy over. You probably wouldn't have gotten it in time anyway in the UK. But
No.
I will send you a hard copy of the book.
Oh,
least I can do.
That'd be
and
great.
thank you for reading the PDF version that I sent yesterday. Very quick.
Yes, I was quite impressed that I actually got to finish it. But as I say, the book that I read. The book that I read, it was very interesting. I liked your when you started off about your friend and him thinking you was a bit silly in the paranormal, and you explained about Obama and the way he felt about elections. That was really good. It was a really good story to grip you in the actual book to start with. It was like, I want to read more now. It was a very good start of the book.
Well, it's an interesting thing because an awful lot of people like to make fun. And I mean, I've done it too. I do like to make fun of people, some of the really crazy people who involve themselves in the paranormal industry is what I'll call it. And there's an awful lot of con artists too, and I like to make fun of them as well.
Yeah.
But beyond them, there's an awful lot of people who take it seriously. Everything from astrology to ghosts to UFOs to Bigfoot, you name it, whatever the paranormal subject is, they take it seriously. And often people within each of those groups think all the other people are crazy. So there's nothing like sitting down with a guy who's a Bigfoot guy, a guy who's a UFO guy, and a guy who's a ghost guy. I've actually done this.
Yeah.
And trying to have a beer with the three of them. And each one of them thinks the other one is nuts. So the Bigfoot guy is like, oh, there's nothing to UFOs, and you ghost people are crazy. And the ghost guy's going, I want nothing to do with you crazy Bigfoot UFO guys. And ditto, and as you sit there as somebody who's sort of interested in all three of those things, you realize it's kind of like religion. It's kind of like sitting down with a Protestant, a Catholic, and a Jewish person and finding out that they look at each other's religion and go, wow, your religion's crazy, but my sky god is the one that you should worship. Yeah. And if you sit out as an agnostic, you go, well, you're all a little crazy, but you all have some interesting things to say as well. And so it's that kind of thing where you try and tell people the Obama story. For those who haven't read the book, and I know what the sales figures are, so I know that the vast majority of people on the planet have not read the book. But, it's just kind of, when he was elected president, as every president, when they're sworn in, they swear an oath of office on the Bible. He was interviewed leading up to the election, as was the Republican candidate, John McCain, as are most politicians in the United States and Canada and even in the UK. Tony Blair is famous for being a very religious person. Nobody thinks they're crazy.
No.
Well, they might think they're crazy for other reasons, but nobody thinks they're crazy because they believe in God, or at least they never say so. And yet, what is God other than this sort of thing that we can't prove exists, that it supposedly lives in the sky or whatever? I mean, just cutting to the chase, it's a paranormal, supernatural being.
Yeah.
So one might argue that UFOs are actually, in a sense, even more logical, because at least people who believe in the extraterrestrial hypothesis, like Stan Friedman, believe that they're not supernatural beings, they're just more technologically advanced beings from another planet that are coming here. That's rooted, at least tangentially, in science. Whereas God is kind of like ghosts, it's rooted in the supernatural. And so I say, unless you're going to make fun of the president of the United States and the prime minister of the United Kingdom and your friend down the street who goes to church and everything like that, unless you want to make fun of those people, you probably shouldn't make fun of somebody who has an interest in ghosts, or has an interest, the afterlife, or has an interest in reincarnation or synchronicity or UFOs or whatever it is. And I wanted to start the book on that note. And I think at the end of the introduction, I say, look, if you're still, after reading this, if you still think this is all crazy, you should probably return the book, or, this might not be the book for you.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go on a little journey here. And I'm not saying I believe any of this stuff. I'm just saying I find it interesting. So let's take a look at it and see what it might mean, if it means anything. But we have to be willing to look and ask questions. And if you're not even willing to do that, then, you can't have a conversation with those people.
Now, talking about, as I say, ghost cases, you mentioned that you did come over to England and do a few of the shows over here, some filmmaking over here with some reputed, may I say, people from the paranormal world over here, Dave Sadler, and a mutual colleague of ours, Steve Mera, who incidentally asked me to give you his best regards.
Yes, they're both still friends on Facebook, and Steve sends me a copy of, is it Phenomena magazine? Right.
Yes.
Every month, I guess. So they don't work together anymore, but at the time, this was 2000 when did we film? 2009, I guess. They were both in a group called the UPIA. I always want to say that like Bruce Willis in Die Hard. UPIA.
Mother.
I won't finish the phrase. I'm sure you have a PG audience.
Let's not do.
That's not it.
But I think most people know where it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were good guys, and they took. I had known Dave before from a previous trip to the United Kingdom when I met him at a conference the late Stuart Miller held in Altrincham. So yeah, they took us around to a few places that were reportedly haunted, and in at least one or two of them, I guess two, I suppose, we had what I consider to be genuinely weird experiences. The other two were kind of duds. The one in Congleton, the Lion and Swan, nothing really happened there. And the Bridestones and the Manchester radio station, nothing really happened there. But we went to two, a cemetery in Schochlack on the Welsh border, which was just an evening of pure weirdness that even to this day I can't completely, I'm a rational person. I try and rationalize it. And there were things that happened. And the frustrating thing for people when they were watching the TV show, and actually now it's available on Amazon Prime in the US at least, so I've been able to read the reviews, most of which have not been kind, and which I find quite amusing, because the usual review that people have been leaving, the negative ones, some people get it and leave positive reviews, but the negative ones say, this is nothing like Ghost Hunters. Where there's no bells and whistles, nothing happens. To which my response is, well, generally speaking, unless you're faking it, which Ghost Hunters does.
Scandal.
Well, I mean, all of those shows do to some degree or another. It's the entertainment industry.
Obviously, yeah.
I'm a television. I'm a film producer and director now. I turned my back on television, but I was a television producer. I made a lousy ghost show. As a TV producer, I failed because it wasn't renewed. And while I think it was serious, although somewhat tongue-in-cheek and credible, and we never faked anything, so what you see is real. I mean, as entertainment went, I can see how a lot of people used to watching Ghost Hunters or Most Haunted or whatever would go, this is kind of dull.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of ghost investigating. It's pretty dull.
When we do our investigations, we have to, from the get-go, we have to turn around and say to them, look, if you're used to Most Haunted and the bumps and bangs, you're not going to get them tonight. If you do, it's a bonus. We always say that to them. But at the end of the day, we're just giving you an insight into paranormal investigating. That's the only way you can really do it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot about the so-called paranormal investigating that I really, really don't like. But there's a core to it that I do. Mm-hmm. So the core to it that I do is what Holly and I did. And yes, in one or two episodes, we pulled out an EMF meter because my co-producer told us that we should at least show the bells and whistles. But it's clear when we're using the EMF meter that we never took it seriously.
Yeah.
So I would hold it up to Holly's head. In one episode, I held it up to Holly's head and I waved it. And then I said, no sign of intelligent life here. And she smacked my hand away. That kind of thing. Because to me, all of that stuff is bunkum. What is most, and so you see all these paranormal groups go out and they use that stuff. And I mean, there's no harm in it, but what is important, the one thing that, and it's weird because you can never, so anyone who's looking for a scientific explanation or proof, evidence, what do you got, doesn't exist. You're going to be left with experiences.
Yes.
So you go out, and this is really what Holly and I did. We went out, we went to these places, we talked to people, and then we went ourselves to see if anything happened to us. And most of the time, nothing happened, which again, as a television producer, I made a lousy television show when it comes to entertainment. Holly and I should have been every 5 minutes going, oh my God, did you hear that, Holly? What was that? Oh. But the thing is, within those 12 episodes, because one was a wrap-up episode, within those 12 episodes, within those 12 places we went to, every now and then something really did happen. And I'd like to think that by having a number of episodes where not a whole lot happened, but we still told the story as it was told to us, so here it is. When something really did happen, Holly and I had the credibility of people who were telling the truth, who wouldn't lie to you, who wouldn't fake something. When we said something happened, it really did happen. When we said we felt something or we heard something, we really did. And so in that sense, I think our show is probably the most credible ghost show ever made. And I feel fairly confident saying that. But it was the least entertaining ghost show ever made, at least for anybody who was looking just for the bells and whistles and, you know, the scary night vision or whatever else they do, which I don't find entertaining at all. But that's because I find the truth entertaining.
But you're right, though. If there is going to be anything, it's going to be personal experiences to you. You know, if, like, for instance, when you was at the church in Cheshire, you heard the hooves, both of you and Holly heard the hooves of the horses. And you both heard them at different times as well. So that's your personal experience you can take away from you. Because I think most of the time, people are out there not to prove that the paranormal is there. I think they're doing, you know, to everybody. They're doing it for themselves more than anything. You know, do you agree with that?
I do and I don't. I think most people who do it in private groups, yes, that's why they're doing it. I think most people, which is to say almost everybody who does it in a very public group or on a television show, they're doing it to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I got paid to do ghost cases. But they're also doing it, I think a lot of them are doing it to try and prove something. And you're never going to be able to prove it. I mean, nobody can prove to me that God exists. No. I have many relatives who believe he does. I'm an agnostic. I don't know. But you couldn't prove it to me if you tried. And I've had a number of people try. It would have to, you know, God would have to come speak to me, or there'd have to be that moment. And I talk about it in the book. One of the cases, it's not really a case, but it is a case. A case that I'm most fascinated with, and I write about it in one of the chapters, is a guy named Henry Allen, who was an evangelical minister here in the maritime colonies at the time, in the 1770s and 1780s, died very young in his mid-30s. But he created a great awakening of one of the fundamental events over a period of about 7 years in early Canadian history, a religious revival that was going on here as the American Revolution was going on south of the border. And one of many reasons why the maritime colonies stayed loyal to the United Kingdom. We were wrapped up in God, as it were, as the saying goes. But he had a fundamental experience when he was a young man. He was walking through a field, and he left a journal, which is sort of one of the primary historical documents in Canadian history, so you can read it. And ever since I was studying him as an undergraduate in history many years ago, I've been struck by what he wrote in the journal. And if you wrote that kind of stuff today, they would call it a paranormal experience. So he suddenly felt this great warmth within him, and he saw things, and I can't possibly do it justice, but he called it being ravished by the spirit. Now, I've heard alleged alien abductees talk the same way. I've heard people who claim to have had ghostly experiences talk the same way. So what fascinates me is that there's a thread of commonality, and Paul on the road to Damascus 2,000 years ago, walking, this Roman tax collector walking on the road to Damascus, and something happened to him that changed his life. So all of these people are talking about personal experiences, contacts that they had with something that was paranormal. Henry Allen and Saul on the road to Damascus viewed it in a religious context because that was the predominant meme of the time. Today, if the same thing happened to Henry Allen today, they might view it in a different way. They might view it as an alien abduction. They might view it as, a ghost experience, whatever. But the point is that they're having those kinds of experiences. They're having contact. They're allegedly having contact, because I don't know. All these people might have mental problems. At the end of the day, there might be a psychological explanation for all of it. But it seems like some people at least have throughout human history had contact with something that is beyond us. And that is the point of entry into the subject that I've come to find very interesting, because if you go look, and the point I sort of try to make in the book, if you go looking for it, or if you open the door to it, that's when it might actually come. So it's almost like going to a bar and, you're surrounded. I'll use the example of beautiful women, but if you're a woman, it could be handsome guys. So you could be in a bar surrounded by beautiful women. If you are not going to go up and talk to them, or at the very least look and do the eye contact thing, or somehow make it clear that you're interested, chances are they're not going to walk over and talk to you. But if you buy them a drink or wink at them, that might get you punched. But, whatever, you make an attempt to make contact with them, they might return that contact. And I write about that in the book, too. A friend of mine and I, sorry, I'm very long-winded. I'll stop after this one little anecdote.
That's
but
right.
we used to go out drinking a lot more than I should probably admit on the air when we were younger. And we would sit in bars, and I could never master it. It's the look. Every guy knows what it is. You look across the bar and you make eye contact with a girl and try and get her to come over. I couldn't do it. I'm hopeless. Couldn't do it. But he was a master at it. So he had this little bet going. And I bet him a pitcher of beer with a particular girl that he couldn't get her over to our table. I think it was within 10 minutes. And sure enough, 4 minutes later, she was sitting right there next to us. So I bought him the pitcher of the beer. But it was that idea. He didn't say anything. He didn't wave her over. All he did was look at her in a certain way, and he opened up a line of communication, unspoken, between him and her that drew her over. And I kind of used that sort of analogy by way of the paranormal by saying, because he made it clear he was open to contact with her. I think, if we do the same thing, if we make it clear to whatever might be out there, Holly and I going to these haunted places, as soon as you go to them, allegedly haunted, I got to keep saying that, as soon as you go to them, I think you're making it clear that if there is something there, you're willing to be interacted with.
Yeah.
And I think that can work with synchronicities too. If you notice one, and I write about this in the book, others seem to follow in quick succession, and then they can disappear. But that, as my friend Greg Bishop, an American radio host, said to me more than once, it's like they're always there. It's just when you open yourself up to them for whatever reason, you start to see them. So that's that. Anyway, that's kind of the point of that's a very long, rambling sort of explanation of what the book's all about, I guess.
Steve?
What I found fascinating about the Alan thing he told us about is that at the end he says he doesn't know whether he actually see this at the time, but at the time he actually thought he did. So it leaves it open to think that maybe it wasn't a visual thing.
Well, yes, exactly. His description as he wrote it in his journal, 30 years ago. I think my math is terrible, but baseball statistics, that's the only thing I can do math on. But his description was very poetic and, written in the style of the time. But the two phrases that always struck me were ravished by the Spirit and wrapped up in God. And he was talking about the very powerful experiences he had. I unless he had a psychotic break, I can't think. Those are the two options for me, really. He had a psychotic break, or he had a genuine experience with something that was, as the Roger Corman film would say, not of this earth. I don't know which one of those two things it is, but I think given the sort of course of human history and the number of people that have talked about having similar experiences in many different ways, I lean now more towards the latter than the former, that there is something to this, that there is more, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but there's more than just, the desk that I can see and that sort of thing. The Shakespearean thing. There's more to heaven and earth than all your philosophy kind of thing. Well, yeah, I've come to the conclusion that I think it's more likely there is than there isn't. And then so the book, I kind of make clear in the book, I don't really want to talk too much about the evidence. I'm just going to work on the assumption that there is something to the paranormal for the sake of argument, if nothing else. And so let's try and figure out what it might be, or what its purpose is, or what the meaning behind it all might be. Because I think that's a much more interesting conversation than getting bogged down with UFO cases or ghost cases and talking, except for my series, Ghost Cases. Get bogged down in that, folks. But it's much more interesting to sit around and speculate about what it might mean. That becomes more of a philosophical, a spiritual, or religious conversation, if you will.
Yeah.
And as opposed to this constant, pursuit of evidence. The only person you have to prove anything to is yourself.
Yes.
And once you've done that, And I can't prove it to you. You could read my book, and I would still say anything in my book, I could be lying. You have to go out. I'm not, but I could be. You have to go out and try and figure it out for yourself. The nice thing about my book or some of these other books that folks write is, you can say, oh, he went to Shockblack Cemetery. Well, if you're in England, I know where that is. I can go there myself and see if I have the same sort of experiences that I did, that Holly did, that Dave Sadler did. I don't know if Steve Mera did. I think, actually Steve saw some lights that night that couldn't be explained. So that's right. That was the one place where everybody, including our camera guy, had, strange things happen to him. So go for yourself and try and see these things
I will do.
yourself.
Now, talk about synchronicity, or close to it anyway. The second part of this question, I actually had the thought before I read the book.
Yes, you did.
Didn't I, Sue?
Yeah.
But in your book, there's a passage that says, obviously, that we are debating where these non-human beings are from, and the line says, "Does it matter if we are you?" Well, my question is, if you are saying that we could be a future us along the idea I had yesterday, that we are not visited by anyone. It's our own collective consciousness that is projecting memories from past visitations.
Unconscious.
Well, consciousness, unconscious, it depends. I'm watching WrestleMania tonight, so most of my friends would say I'm permanently unconscious if I'm a fan of pro wrestling. Go Bray Wyatt. But it's I'm cheering for Bray Wyatt, not The Undertaker, which is kind of a paranormal wrestling match. There you go, because of the forces of darkness or whatever. But we know so little about what's around us, and I don't want to get into talking about, because anytime somebody uses the word quantum, my head starts to spin, because 99.999% of the people who use the word quantum in terms of the paranormal don't have a clue what they're talking about, and I'm one of them. So I know just enough, and I've talked to just enough people to know that I probably shouldn't use that word. But science is moving, at least some elements of science are moving more and more towards the idea that all of us, in a sense, and by us I mean you guys and me and the past and the present and the future and the desk and the star at the end of the universe, that we're all somehow interconnected. And we're not sure how that might work in the big picture, but if we are, then if there is that interconnectivity, then we might be getting, some of it might be echoes. Echoes is the wrong word, but it's the only one I can think of right now. Might be echoes of our past or echoes from the future. We might be getting glimpses, you might be able to access that kind of thing. I'm trying to think, I attended a lecture by Michio Kaku, the world-renowned physicist, in London when Holly and I both went when we were there. Because the nice thing about doing a television show away is you can build a vacation around it. So we did. Spent 3 weeks in Scotland, England, and the Czech Republic. But one of the days we went to see Michio Kaku, and he actually took he was taking questions, and I asked him one, and I said, communication with aliens, what do you think it would be like? I paraphrased, but that was it. And he sort of ignored a couple of other questions that people asked, and he zoomed right in on mine because I had sort of made it clear that I read his book, and the other people had not, so I think he liked that. But and I talk about this in the book. I think I actually quote his exact answer. He said, view us as ants. He used the ant analogy, and view the aliens, whoever they are, or whatever intelligence we're dealing with, which could include us from the future or whatever, as, sort of humans. Well, whatever they are, they're driving by on the superhighway. So the M1, is it the M1 for you guys or whatever it is? Yeah. The Trans-Canada Highway for us, the interstates in the U.S. They're zooming by on the highway in their cars. They don't even know there's an ant on the side of the road. And the ant doesn't realize that, can't even comprehend the road, but even if it could, wouldn't really understand, who it is that's driving by on the road. So these people in their cars can be talking to each other. But then he said, but the one thing the ant would understand is if the ant wandered out into the road, and the car blew by the ant and blew him off the road, they'd have a brief moment of contact. So they're connected in that sense. I don't know. I think that might be the point he was trying to make is we're never really going to be able to access and understand what this communication might be. But that doesn't mean that it's not there. It's just working at a different level. But we might be able to get glimpses of it as we're standing on the side of the road like ants.
Yeah. You talk about this advanced non-human intelligence. What do you think it is?
I can't answer that question. That's and in the book. I think it's pretty clear. I don't think I ever answered that question, do I?
Right.
Because I can't. I don't know.
Okay.
Do
you think it is aliens or do you think it's, could it be aliens? Or we have somebody we know has a theory that when we talk to spirit, on ghost hunts and what have you, we're actually talking. It could be talking to aliens or a higher force. It's the same with mediums. Who are they actually talking to? The genuine ones, obviously, if there is any. Who do they actually talk to when they're getting messages? Is it their own consciousness or?
Well, I'll take a bit of a dodge and say that I don't know, but I'll offer sort of an idea.
Yeah.
Because I don't think any of us can know. But what I sort of posit in the book is that whatever it is, the more important question is, why is it interacting with us? Is it meaning to do us harm? Is it meaning, as many UFO people would say, the Space Brothers are here to save us? And to which I would respond, well, they're doing a lousy job, because for the 70 years that they've been at it, we're still fighting wars and hunger so they're not doing a very good job for enlightened Space Brothers. So, and the kind of answer that I have is looking at the course of how it's all run throughout human history, how these interactions may have gone. It seems, and being an entertainer myself, I used to be a musician and now a television filmmaker kind of thing. So and even as a lawyer, part of your job is to entertain a jury or a judge, to make a case. I sort of look at it and say, all of it looks to me like how I used to feel and how I still feel as an entertainer. A painting, what does it do? All entertainment, all art at its highest form is supposed to challenge you and get you to ask questions about yourself and the world around you, and to think, ultimately to think. Art is meant to make you think. A good television show should make you think. A bad television show will not. A good film will make you think. A bad one will not, which is the difference between an Ingmar Bergman film and a Michael Bay film. Bergman film make you think. Michael Bay film will not, unless you really want to think about giant robots, in which case you're lost to me, and I'm probably lost to you. But a good painting will do that. A good Shakespeare will do that. Good writing, good music. Music will do that too. And you don't need words. You don't need the modern form where you have rap stars or even the Beatles or anyone writing lyrics. Lyrics are lovely, but some of the best lyrics are the more elliptical ones that, as John Lennon used to say, well, I don't know what it means to you, but I know what it means to me.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what it has to mean something to you, right? So you get your own meaning. And I think that's a terrible John Lennon impression, but that's the best I can do. Speaking to you from beyond the grave. So
be careful about your impressions. There's another one coming up later.
Excellent. But that's as an artist, and I know this as one. So if I was a supernatural being, and I wanted to if I wanted to interact with humans, because humans are lesser life forms, if you will, they're not as advanced intellectually or whatever. No artist that I've ever met wants to give people the answers. So when I make a film, in fact, I actually had somebody interview me because two of my films were in a film festival last year, and somebody interviewed me and asked me, what does this film mean? I said, well, that's the worst question you can ask me, because I don't know. I kind of used the Lennon answer. I said, I know what it means to me, but the whole point of making a film is to put it out there and to let each individual watching it figure out what it means to them. And they might take something out of it that I had never intended. And that's perfectly fine with me, as long as they paid to get in. And as long as they, gave it a good recommendation to their friends, then I'm fine with whatever they take. You don't want to feed people the answers. And I think the supernatural is like that too. I think all of these things, whether it's ghosts or UFOs or whatever it is, whoever it is out there, and it could be space aliens, it could be God. I have no idea who it is, but I think they're trying to encourage us to think for ourselves by giving us puzzles to solve. I talk in one chapter about, I think it was about synchronicities, about the puzzle nature of it. And I had somebody, that's why I write in the book too, this idea that, well, somebody actually told me, well, yeah, but some of these things are really scary. Like there's nothing nice about alien abductions, if you believe, and even if you don't believe that they're literally, and I don't, literally abducted out of their house by aliens, even if they're coming into your mind and creating these scary images, a lot of ghost stories, there's nothing. In fact, I experienced a couple of very scary things while shooting ghost cases. He said, why would they do that? None of that is beneficial to humanity. Your theory is terrible, Paul. And I said, well, that's not quite true. Lots of people make horror films, very, very scary horror films, and people subject themselves to them. They go to them knowing they're going to be scared. And even knowing that, they still get scared. That is part of the human experience. That is part of understanding who we are. So I think if they're interacting with us in this way, in this form of artistic presentation, which is what I think these things are. They're almost like paintings or songs or whatever you want to call them. Each one of them is designed to elicit a response to us, from us dealing with one of our emotions and to make us think. And I think to stretch the entertainment artistic metaphor as far as I possibly can, to come back to the idea that you have to open yourself up to it. If I make a movie, you can't see it unless you buy a ticket, or unless you download it on Netflix, or unless you pirate it illegally. Shame on you if you do. But, I have to eat too. But whatever you have to do, you have to take a conscious effort. Even if you're stealing it on the internet, you have to make a conscious effort to obtain that film so that you can open it up and watch it. And I think the paranormal is exactly like that. Ultimately, when I looked at it all, every case that I saw, in one form or another, somebody had opened themselves up to that form of contact that I considered a credible case. And so I said, yep, these are people who are buying tickets. And one person's walking in to see Saw, a horror film, and another person's walking in to see The X-Files, a film about aliens, and another person's walking in to see sort of an M. Night Shyamalan film that's kind of, don't really know what it's about, but it might be about synchronicity or something. They're all going in to see different films, but they're all in the same theater. And to me, the paranormal, I like this. I've never actually said this before. The paranormal is theater. It's one big cinema with many different individual theaters within it. I'm just going to stop talking now because I think I've
fine.
Said
Steve, carry on.
Who's this loudmouth Canadian that they have on the show?
Talking about all the different genres of art, how much do you think our present perception of what may or may not be happening is hampering our ability to see the whole picture, whatever that may be?
Oh, a great deal. I go back to my good friend Greg Bishop in the U.S. I've had him. I do sort of a podcast every now and then when I feel like it, and I've been on his radio show a number of times, and we talk a lot. And it's so I'm going to give him credit for this. But he said we're limited by language. Our ability to communicate is extremely limited. We have many other ways to communicate. Again, going back to my friend Peter. Oh no, I've named him. That's terrible. I didn't even name him. I don't think I named him in the book. Sorry, Peter. In the bar with the girl, he was communicating without using words. So that's just one example of nonverbal communication. But generally speaking, our way of communicating is verbally, as we're doing now. But that's an extremely limited way of dealing with it. Not just language. I mean, if you guys were speaking Czech, I know because I was in the Czech Republic. My ability to communicate with people in the Czech Republic was infinitesimal compared to my ability to communicate with people here in Halifax because I didn't speak their language. So we would move, though. If I had to use that form of communication, I was in trouble. But we could move to other forms of communication, sign language, looks, pointing here and there, and eventually we could figure it out. So that was kind of, you're outside your comfort zone. But we're all in that box of communication, and it's very limiting. And I think, going back to Kaku's thing, this super highway that he talked about, which I did a terrible job of explaining. I think I did a better job in the book because I just literally quoted from him and he did a better job.
Yeah.
But, there's this super highway of information and communications going on up there. And, well, he used email as an example, a perfect example. What is email? So I could say the following sentence to you. Russell Martin is a catcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. It's a baseball team. Boom, there's the sentence. So I can communicate it to you like that, or I could send you an email with the exact same sentence. Well, what is an email? It's just, as he explained it, it was originally developed by the military as a way of trying to get communication through, and it would break it up in its constituent parts. And if you picked any one part, then, you wouldn't necessarily have the whole message, and then it gets reassembled on the other side. So if you only heard one word, Martin or Jays, you'd have no idea what I'm saying. You have to reassemble the message on your end. The problem is we're terrible at reassembling the message. So we might only get bits and pieces of that message that's being given to us. I think synchronicity falls into that a little bit, because I think that gives us a glimpse. Long conversations I've had with my friend Greg about what synchronicity is, because I was, if having read the book, you would know when I was in Los Angeles having this run of synchronicities that I write about, some of it actually wound up taking place in Greg's radio studio. We were on air doing a show, him and a friend Walter Bosley and I, talking about these synchronicities that I'd been having, including earlier that day. And it was happening in the studio. I'd opened to pages of books. It's kind of, hard to explain. And I don't completely remember exactly how it went, which is why I wrote it down at the time. But, that kind, and he would say, look, you're just getting a glimpse of what's always there. And it's kind of like you're accessing just a very small part of the message. And I went, whoa, that's deep, dude. And then we went and had milkshakes. And that's
your milkshake.
Now that's deep.
Milkshakes always make me feel better when I'm confronted with the absurdity of the universe that I don't understand. It's like, vanilla milkshake. Now everything, it doesn't make sense, but it feels better. So it's comforting. And maybe that's the message that the advanced intelligence was trying to send me.
Yeah.
Why do you think we don't see these synchronicities?
Well, I don't think
because most of the time we don't.
We're not open to them. We're not looking for them, and we do see them. We might not even. That's the thing about communication. We might not even recognize them. It's just, as Greg said to me, he said, Paul, you might have been having these things happen to you before you got here, and you might have them when you go home, but you didn't recognize them. You didn't notice them, and it's only because one thing. And I remember what that thing was. I was in an airport in Chicago, and it had to do with the gate number, which I got switched from B11 to B6. And for some reason that I actually can't remember, I'm sorry, because I haven't read my own book in 2 years, something about that tweaked. And, because I was just sitting in certain places and they changed the gate on me, and they changed it to the gate that I had moved to because there was some loud music playing or something. And I just thought, well, that's odd. That's weird. That's strange. What a coincidence. So, and he said, well, that got you thinking about it. And then you started looking for them, and you noticed them as they continued to appear for a period of time while I was out there. And then when I came home, they sort of stopped. I had one more when I got back from the trip. And then that was it, but they come up every now and then. A couple happened to me just a couple of weeks ago, and I went into my roommate, and she's known me, for 30 years. And I said, wow, this is weird, right? And well, here, I'll tell you one. The last film I did, the composer that we had for the film was a British fellow named Imran Ahmad, very good composer. And he's done a lot of film scoring work and everything. But that's not a normal, okay, let me rephrase. He'd be very upset if I said it like that. That's not a name you hear a lot here in Nova Scotia. Let me put it to you like that.
Yeah.
It's not like McDonald, or Campbell. Those are names you'd hear a lot here. Imran Ahmad, not so much. So I was talking to him and via Skype, and I hung up, and I hadn't done this in months. I said, you know what I really need to do? Because my office is a mess. It's like a disaster zone. There's paper everywhere. I said, what I really have to do is I have to pick up the receipts, which are lying all over the floor, from the production, put them, straighten them out. I had to do the financial paperwork here so I could claim the receipts of my taxes. Hadn't done it for months. Lean down, pick up the first one, and right underneath that is a receipt from a gas station, or a petrol station, as you folks would say, where I'd filled up during the production, and the clerk's name was Imran. Now, cue the X-Files music. Does that mean anything? I don't know if it means anything, but I would call that a synchronicity, that a guy I hadn't talked to in several weeks, and I didn't really have any particular reason to talk to him other than, just wound up chatting that evening. And there on the floor, which I hadn't looked at in months, buried under a ton of paper, going for a specific type of paper too, so I reached into a particular place, a gas station receipt with his name on it from a year and a half before for a film that he had scored. Now, a lot of people would just say that's a strange coincidence, Paul, and make nothing more of it. But sort of the history of how he became the composer for the film is kind of interesting, because he was not the original composer for the film either. We replaced the previous composers in a very amicable way at the last minute and brought him at the very last minute after, a bunch of other stuff. So I kind of look at all that and I go, well, okay, can I assign meaning to this? Well, maybe this is whatever it is out there, giving me a glimpse that somehow I made the right decision, or that Imran and I are more connected than maybe I thought. Maybe I should give him a gig on my next film, which I'm considering. Or maybe this is just the universe's way of taking a moment to remind me that we're actually all interconnected.
Yeah.
And maybe in 3 weeks I'll get another reminder that will have nothing to do with Imran. But I took that one into my roommate, and normally she writes this. She goes, Paul, you're just crazy. Get out. And even she went, ooh, okay, that one's weird. So.
Well, we've got Andy, one of our co-hosts in Essex, on Skype with you at the moment. Now he's just put in the chat room, this man has stolen my brain. Would you like to elaborate on that, Andy?
Yeah.
We just became Facebook friends too. So.
Yes, it is me, yes. No, I agree with pretty much everything Paul has said so far. I can't find myself disagreeing with any of it. He's placing it in that, what I call the third area between ghosts and the paranormal in terms of UFOs, etc. Because we had this conversation before you came on air, Paul, about this idea that I certainly believe that both ghosts and UFOs come from the same source, and neither of them are ghosts in the conventional sense or UFOs in the conventional sense. So a question of, is it something completely external to us, or is it something that's actually part of our collective psyche? I go for the collective psyche as a Jungian psychotherapist. That's very much my sort of bag, if you like. But I'm just literally trying to think of a question for you, because I am totally in agreement with everything you're saying so far. Now, I have got your book, and I shall definitely be reading it.
I'm a Manchester City fan. We might disagree about that. I don't know.
Oh dear.
You definitely would. He's a gooner.
Huh?
He's a gooner.
He supports Arsenal.
Well, actually, there's a coincidence. Although not much of a synchronicity. But my partner in the United Kingdom, his British producer that I work with, is a huge Arsenal fan. So there you go. Of all the clubs, but I mean, that's one I would look at, and somebody might say, "Ooh, this is synchronicity. She mentioned Arsenal," and I would go, probably not, because there are millions of Arsenal fans. So that one perhaps is not as much of a synchronicity.
Well, also these guys live literally 5 minutes away from the Man City Stadium as well. So
I don't live too far away, no.
There you go. It's if you had mentioned you were a fan of Peterborough, that might have, and he was a fan of Peterborough, that might be a little more of a synchronicity.
We moved up.
We moved to Manchester from Peterborough.
Well, see, now that actually, this is like the radio show I had with Greg. That's a little weird, because why on earth would I think of Peterborough? I've never been there. I have no idea why I thought of Peterborough. And how did we even get on football? I have no idea. So we wander into football just because I mentioned I'm a Manchester City fan, by way of saying that might be what we disagree about, Andy, and who's just become my Facebook friend. And somehow we wander in. I mentioned Peterborough. I swear to God, folks, I have no idea that they just moved from Peterborough.
Well, okay. It was a while ago, but we do go back every now and again.
That's weird. That's a little weird right there.
The other thing
I'm surprised you've heard of Peterborough.
I don't even know how I've heard of Peterborough. They're not in the Premier League, are they?
No, they're not.
Yeah, they're like in one of the lower orders. I have no idea why I'm thinking of Peterborough. Weird. That is, that's odd. Have you ever been to Dundee? Because if there's a Dundee connection, then we're really set.
No, but my son does live in Glasgow.
Well, there's one other little thing. Snippet.
One of my grandfathers was born in Dundee.
There is a rather famous football commentating person on Talk Sport who is a Peterborough fan who hates Arsenal. So there's another connection there for you. He particularly hates Arsenal. He has a thing called the Daily Arsenal on his show, and has to go to Arsenal every day. But on the more serious side, I mean, you might have noticed, if you had a quick look at my Facebook page, I'm quite a follower of Advaita Vedanta. the belief that everything is unified as one, that the whole universe and all of us are one thing anyway. So that really ties in with my belief system as well, that everything you're saying pretty much fits in. So yes, I'm lost for words to say what I could actually ask you about, because you pretty much answered those questions for me already. So
it's odd because it's not something when I was younger, and by younger I mean really, like 4 years ago, in my early 40s. Maybe it's a midlife crisis, but I never really gave this kind of stuff a whole lot of thought. But over the last couple of years, I've tried to spend a lot more time outside. I take, and in fact, I took if you go to my Facebook page, my new friend Andy, you'll see pictures I posted of a walkabout I took this morning in a park around here with a teddy bear friend of mine.
I'd say there's a little bear accompanying you on those journeys.
Yes, he's my new profile pic, Rupert the bear. He was out enjoying the snow. But, when you get out into nature, Thoreau was great for this. And if you haven't read Walden, everybody, I'm firmly convinced, should read Walden. This idea that only if you get out into nature can you really understand the interconnectivity, not that Thoreau would have phrased it like this, the interconnectivity between everything, how every little thing is sort of related to one another. So I actually find, like, I used to go to a lot of movies. I mean, I make movies. That's what I do for a living. I very rarely go to a theater anymore to watch a film. I'll watch them at home. If I watch them at all. What I find much more interesting now is I'll go out and I'll walk through the woods, and I'll just, if it's rained or snowed as it did today, I was watching melting snow today for 10 minutes, little drips of snow coming down, and just thinking, I actually had this thought, if there were extraterrestrials, space aliens from another planet, how would they view this planet that we're on and what we're doing to it? And then I thought to myself, because I was going to be on this show, so I was thinking about the paranormal, I said, well, self, isn't that the whole part of your book? This idea that whatever it is that's out there, this intelligence that's interacting with us, is trying to get us to think and ask questions. Well, I don't know. Maybe the intelligence put that, that drop of water there right now to make you think about the bigger picture of what we're doing to the planet or whatever. I have no idea. But I find myself asking an awful lot more questions, having been a ghost hunter, if you will. Much more than I ever did about being a documentary maker making UFO films. It was only when I really got out there. I mean, I always get out on the road to interview people, but it was only when Holly and I went out there and had our own experiences. We opened the door. That's when things sort of changed for me. So if I can leave your listeners with one piece of advice, it would be, okay, 2 pieces of advice. Buy my book, and because all of the answers to the universe are contained therein. And the second piece of advice, and there's some lovely pictures. The second piece of advice would be, get out there and do it yourself. If you're ever visiting Český Krumlov in the Czech Republic, and I encourage you to do it because it's a World Heritage Site, it's a lovely town, but take the same walk that I did and if you read the book, you can kind of trace where that walk would have been. At night, on a Monday or Tuesday when there's nobody else in town, and see if the same sort of thing might happen to you that happened to me, where I may or may not have run into a shadow person, or at least a shadowy form, and had something tap me on the shoulder and appear in a window. And of all the things that have ever happened to me, what happened to me in Český Krumlov is the one that I still can't wrap my mind around, and was also the most frightening thing that has ever happened to me. And yet I'm glad it happened to me, because it was the sort of, this happened after Holly and I had done our Ghost Cases thing. So the series was wrapped and we were on our vacation. And she wasn't that. She was back in we were staying in a wizard's castle, which was awesome. It was this little castle that was an inn. So you don't get those here in Canada, but they're everywhere in Europe. So I have to go back. And, it was just in this old European town with these narrow alleys and everything. And there was nobody else around. And I saw a shadow person. And then something touched me on the shoulder, and then something touched me on the other shoulder as I was on a bridge standing next to a statue of Jesus. I mean, at some point you just sort of look around and you go, what the heck is happening to me? And you kind of have to take a step. Okay, well, I ran off the bridge, as I make clear in the book. I'm a coward at my core. I sort of ran. It's true. If there had been anybody there, they would have seen me running away like a little kid. But when I stopped running, not because I wasn't afraid anymore, but because I was out of breath and on the verge of a heart attack, because I'm out of shape. It forces you as you're breathing, trying to get your breath back, to think, well, whatever happened to me, it didn't hurt me. there's no harm. I didn't get pushed into the river by this shadow being or whatever, or strangled or stabbed. It's just something, it was like a fun house. As a kid, you would walk in, my parents would take us to fun houses, haunted houses and stuff, amusement parks. And you'd go through and crazy things like, an animatronic hand would come out. Ooh. And as a kid, it would scare the bejesus out of you, not as an adult anymore. But there are a lot of other things as you grow older. I think we lose sight of that. I think we lose touch with those more primal emotions. And I'd like to think that maybe what the paranormal, the supernatural is doing is bringing us back in touch with those basic primal emotions, love, fear, sometimes even hatred. Yeah. All of those things, which allow for better understanding of ourselves. And to Andy's point, maybe it's ourselves that's doing it. Maybe what we're really just tapping into is the collective unconscious. Maybe we're all in, and so in that sense, we're reconnecting with who we are. And part of reconnecting with who we are is, and my American friends hate me when I say this because it sounds very socialistic, but part of what or communist even, but part of what the point of reconnecting is, we're not just reconnecting with the individual, which would be a very libertarian way of looking at it. We're reconnecting with the collective. Mm. And if you're a science fiction fan who watched the series Star Trek Deep Space Nine, there's a character called Odo, who's part of a race called the Founders. And what the Founders do, they can separate into their individual constituent parts. So Odo is a being unto himself, and the other Founders are too. But then they can all remerge into what they call the Great Link. And they become liquid beings, and they all kind of it's a lake of intelligence and beings. And I these are the big questions that the paranormal should be asking. And science fiction can be good at spurring some of this too. I was on another radio show and we started talking about religion, and I frankly scared the host because it's a good friend of mine, Tim Binnall. He is sort of one of a more libertarian American who likes to think of the individual. He said, "You're frightening me, Paul. I don't want to think of a heaven where everybody is part of everybody else. I just want heaven to be me in heaven with other people who are individuals." And I said, "I don't think that's the way it works, Tim. I think if there is a heaven, the big picture here, maybe it's just we move to a place where we become part of that collective again after having spent some time as an individual, but never having fully divorced ourselves from the collective. So we're always part of it, but we're also taking an individual journey." And if you look at a lot of religious and spiritual traditions, at their core, a lot of it is talking about that. There's a commonality to it. And I think that gets back to this idea, as you would phrase it, the collective unconscious when we're here, but when we move to that next plane, if we do, it becomes very much a collective conscious, and we share our experiences. So someday you and all of us and all of your listeners will be sitting in the great human link, and they'll be able, without having to pay for my book, to access the story about Chesky Krumlov if they really want to. Although I would suggest that they should probably spend most of their time with Paul McCartney or something. And
Can I take you back to that time when you was with Holly Stevens?
Please do, because I quite like Holly.
When you was sitting in a cafe, I'm not sure whether it was just over a milkshake or whether it was over dinner. In the book, you mentioned that you asked Holly, what would you say was the scariest experience you've had? And she goes on to explain about the Churchill Mansion. I'd like to put that question to you.
What was the scariest experience Holly ever had?
No, what you've ever had.
I'm just kidding. Well, there's no question. I sound like Porky Pig. There's no question it was, I do a much better Yosemite Sam. The Chesky Krumlov, the shadow, I dedicated an entire chapter to that.
Yeah.
For the particular reason that it was in every aspect frightening. And I just remember going back to the hotel room, and which Holly and I were sharing, but she had a boyfriend and nothing ever went on between us. So it's kind of funny, as I make clear in the book, they had booked us into the wrong room and they thought we were a couple. So there was only a very small, wasn't even a double, it was kind of a large twin bed. And there was just no way. She said, "Paul, come on, get up here." And I slept on the floor. Things I will remember. And it was a very hard and cold floor, even though it was June. And things I will never forget. I could have woken her up. I thought about going in and saying, "Holly, whoa, this freak," and I didn't. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to think about it. other than myself. So I laid down on the floor, which was, I think it was a stone floor, with the little blanket that I had and the teeny little pillow, and I just stared up the ceiling for about 2 hours thinking to myself, what the heck just happened to me? And I kept thinking, I really, really, really would like to wake Holly up right now and talk to her about this, but I didn't. And not only that, she and I had a very open communication throughout the entire process of doing ghost cases. We were best friends. So we would talk about everything, including like in Shocklack where, we would have experiences together. I never told her, not the next day, not the next week, not the next year, about what I call the shadow person in Chesky Krumlov. She only heard about it. Nobody heard about it until I decided I'd put it in the book. And there were two reasons why. One, I didn't want to seem like a lunatic because I still have trouble. There's still that thing where you don't want people to. I'm a serious guy. I have a serious life. I have a serious career. I have a law degree and a history degree, and I'm rooted in what people call the real world. So there's still a bit of what my Uncle Stan calls the laughter curtain that concerns me. So I was reticent to tell anyone, even my best friends, even my own fiance at the time. I didn't tell anybody about it. And then finally, when I was writing the book, I said, look, it would be dishonest of me if I did not put this in the book, because this is the most frightening and yet most exhilarating, most real experience that I had in my entire time doing that show, frankly, in my entire life in terms of the paranormal and the supernatural. So to not put it in the book, no matter how stupid or silly or ridiculous it might make me look to some people, would be a dishonest act on my part. And if nothing else, this book will be truthful and honest, even if you might think I'm crazy. So I put it in the book, and Holly read it, and she said, why didn't you tell me at the time? I wouldn't have thought you were nuts. And I said, no, I know you wouldn't have thought I was nuts, but I had to process it myself. And it took me about 2.5, 3 years to fully process it so I could get it into written form and, try and find some meaning from it and place it in the context of everything else that was happening before and after. So the synchronicities, the ghostly, whatever you want to call them, experiences during doing ghost hunting, ghost cases, all of that to me was part of a journey that I was on, that I shared some of it with Holly. I shared other parts of it with Greg and Walter on the synchronicity, and my brother on the synchronicity bits. And some of it you share with people who aren't even there. In the synchronicity thing, the end game is I was walking along La Brea, which is a street very near Hollywood Boulevard. And it was a strange series of events that got me to La Brea. And I looked over, and I was right. I'd never walked on La Brea before, even though I'd driven down it many times. I'd been to LA many times. And I'd never really noticed that Jim Henson Studios there was an entrance to it on La Brea. And there's the opening door, or the gate, and on top of the gate is a statue of Kermit the Frog. I am notorious, as I set out in the book, I do a Kermit the Frog impression. In fact, I do it on film sets. I'll introduce people like, ladies and gentlemen, Il Duce Benito Mussolini, that kind of thing.
That's like me asking you.
Yeah, not that I've ever introduced Benito Mussolini to everyone. He's dead, but the ghost of Benito Mussolini maybe. And so a friend of mine, the one friend who is always asking me to do that, who is a huge fan of that, and just loves it when I do the Kermit the Frog impression. And is named Veronica Reynolds. And we've never had a relationship, but there's always been, where there's smoke, there's never fire, but there could have been potential fire. We're very good friends, but there's a deep connection there that will never manifest, but there just is. So there I am on La Brea, where I shouldn't have been. I was walking, no reason to be there, just wound up there. There's Kermit the Frog. I looked down at my feet. I include a picture of this in the book. I had a witness, a guy named Ben Stevens, who was there with me when this happened. And what is etched into the cement on the block that I'm standing on? The name Veronica. Somebody had carved it in when they put the cement there. You come along and you write your name or initials or whatever. They had written the name Veronica, which is it's not an uncommon name, but it's not a particularly common name either. How did I wind up that? And that was the end of the synchronistic run that I was on. So all of that led me to there. And I thought, wow, okay, so that's weird. Now that's not a frightening experience, but it made me think about different things. So, I mean, I can't discount stuff like that. When you experience it, when you open yourself up to it, I think interesting things can happen to you. And so I bought a ticket, and then I left the movie house. And like any good movie, it left me with more questions than answers. And I've been trying to, sort of answer those questions myself ever since.
Yeah. So what do you think when you hear stories about poltergeist activity? What's your opinion on them? Have you ever come across any in your
Yes.
journey?
Steve Mera, for instance, has a very did I include it in the book? No, I don't think I did, but it was in an original draft, and I took it out because it was his story, not my story. And
yeah.
But he has a very good poltergeist story. I've met a lot of other people. In fact, Holly and I, who knows, quotation marks, poltergeist, might have experienced some of that ourselves doing ghost cases. I come back. I still think it's part of the same thing as Andy, I think, was saying too. It's all part and parcel of the same thing. So I don't people put different labels on it. So they'll call this a poltergeist, that a vampire, that a UFO, that a whatever, that God. And to me, it's all coming from the same place. You're all in the same theater. You're just watching a different movie. So to me, Poltergeist literally is a different movie. And here's a coincidence or synchronicity for you. I have a friend in Los Angeles who is the distributor of some of my UFO films. His name is Mark Victor, and he is the writer of Poltergeist. He wrote the original film, Poltergeist.
Really?
So, I don't know. You asked me about Poltergeist, and I'm a good friends with the guy who wrote Poltergeist, and I sort of have a business relationship with him. Again, weird, because you could have asked me about anything.
Yeah.
But so you see all these, when you come across you realize that all of these little connections, you can drive yourself mad. In fact, I think in the book I reference a guy who literally drove himself mad, dealing with synchronicities. And so it's like a rabbit hole. If you you probably shouldn't go down too far, because you might start seeing them everywhere. And the next thing you know, somebody will walk into your bedroom and there'll be nothing but scribbling on the wall in crayon, preferably crayon, maybe blood. So I don't want to go too far down the road. The Peterborough thing was that's weird. Okay, that was weird. The poltergeist thing might just be a coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but you start to see these connections, and then I think at the end of the day, for me, how did it change me? So, I think it made me a better person, which sounds very new agey and airy fairy, but I think it actually made me more connected to the people and the world around me, maybe than I had been before. I think it made me a nicer person, because I think I started thinking more about the bigger picture. And if, and I think they have to be, these supernatural intelligences, if they exist, I think they have to be benign, because if they weren't benign, they could have destroyed us by now. So I think ultimately, whatever they're trying to do, they're trying to lead us, and they're not forcing us to go there, but they're encouraging us to go in a positive path. And in my case, at least, I think I'm a better person for having done it, because I think it encouraged me to think more about those bigger picture things than I ever had before. And I think the answers that I got out of it stem back to that thing of interconnectivity. So you're much less likely to be mean to somebody, which I could be, I think, a lot more before than after, if you see that other person as potentially, you're connected to them. So by being mean to them, you're being mean to yourself. By saying terrible things to somebody in a roundabout way, you're saying terrible things to yourself. You're hurting yourself as much as you are them. I had never thought of it really that way beforehand, but I do now. And so if that's what they were trying to accomplish, if that was the message of the movie for them when I went through it, then mission accomplished. And if they were writing another script that had nothing to do with that, then I would hope that they're just like I am. Good. He got in, he watched the movie, he took a different message. Good for him. But that's not what we were intending. We wanted him to become a serial killer. Oh, well. We still have Bob for that. Yeah, he's doing a good job.
What I find interesting about your shadow experience is that so many of these are quick. They're there and they're gone. I had one myself. Saw the shadow, it saw me and disappeared. Gone, finished. But in the book you say that, excuse me, you actually saw it walk over the bridge behind you, and then you disappeared, and then you saw it again after that. So it seemed to last a long time.
Well, it. Sorry, I'm out of water too. It happened over a period, and memory is not a perfect thing. So people think that memory is like a photograph. You can take a picture and boom, immediately access it. And it's one of the things that makes witness testimony inherently unreliable as a factual statement of what exactly happened. So, but not necessarily unreliable as a more subjective statement of what might have happened. So I do remember, and again, this is one of the reasons why I wrote it down. I wanted to write it down, and I'd written it down contemporaneously at the time, and then I rewrote it in a more literary fashion for the book, but I had the basic details because I thought, look, in 3 or 4 years, I might have a different memory of this. I want to remember this as it happened. And so I worked briefly as a police officer with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police when I was in law school. And there's a reason we took notes. You'd have your notepad with you, and if you were in a car accident or something or arresting somebody, you would immediately write it up afterwards because 6 months later you'd be called to testify. And the phrase we would always use is, Your Honor, could I refer to my notes to refresh my memory? Because I made these notes at the time. That would be a much more accurate reflection of what happened than me trying to access the memories now. And of course, you were always allowed to do that. So the book for me is kind of my notes that I use to refresh my memory of what happened in Chesky Krumlov, because I remember broad strokes. Certain things I remember clear as a bell. So I was sitting in this town square, and I saw that was the first time I saw the shadow figure. I'll just call him the shadow figure, for lack of a better term. And so I saw the shadowy kind of figure, which I just kind of thought, oh, okay, there's somebody else in the town square with me. And I looked away, and then I looked back, and it was gone. And I couldn't. Unless the guy was the Flash, there were no doors or alleyways that he could have popped into. He had just disappeared in literally a second. And I kind of clocked that, as my friend Andrew would say, and I thought, that's weird. And then at that point, I was a little afraid, but it's kind of a slightly frightening situation. I'm in this strange town. I don't know, maybe the mafia hangs out there, or some Czech gang or something like that, or Nazis hiding over from the war. I have no idea who's there. So I'm alone. I'm in this strange town. I'm alone. It's creepy. I just saw something strange. I'm going to go back to the wizard's castle. Mm-hmm. And I stopped. So I walked down the road, the main road, and there's a bridge that leads between the two sections of the town. Before you get to the bridge, there was this toy store, Love Toys. As you might be able to tell from viewing my Facebook page, that's not the only teddy bear that I have. So I have dozens of them and lots of other toys. So I was thinking about buying some toys. They were these little handmade wooden toys for my niece and nephews back here in Canada. So I thought, well, okay, I'd kind of sort of calmed down by then. I stopped at the window to look into the toy store, these little toys. And that's when I nothing touched me, but I felt this weird, like the chill you get. I'd had this a couple of times when I'd been on doing ghost cases. And then I looked up into the window. So I'm facing the window of the toy store, and I'm right next to it, and I see this shadowy figure behind me. Well, I've been in enough tight spots, both as a cop or a police officer, but also as an individual citizen, including filmmaking in some places where I get into a few tight situations. My initial reaction is to ball my fists up, spin around, and be prepared to punch somebody because I have no idea who's behind me. Like, I thought there was somebody behind me. And usually when somebody sneaks up behind you like that silently, it's because they're there to rob you. So I really thought I was about to get robbed. And somebody had been sort of keeping an eye on me. Turn around, nobody there. I went, well, okay, first, good, I'm not being robbed. Secondly, and good luck to you, I had no money on me anyway. So, and secondly, I thought, okay, now I'm really, really starting to get a little bit freaked out here. Because I'd seen the guy in this town square, and now I'd had this experience over my shoulder. So I started to beat not running, but a walking fast kind of thing across the bridge. And as I was going across the bridge, which I remember it now as a not cobblestone, but sort of an old wooden bridge. I don't know why I said cobblestone, where you could hear clippity-clop, you could hear your footsteps kind of things.
Yeah.
If a horse went across it, you could hear that. Now, somebody who's been to Chesky Krumlov might be going, oh, my God, he's wrong. It's not a wooden bridge. Well, that's how I remember it. I didn't bend down to check, but you could definitely hear sounds. So I hear behind me, I'm going to use my glass case to try and, I don't even know if that came through, but I hear what
Yeah.
sounded like footsteps to me. There is nobody else on the bridge. There's nobody else anywhere near me. I hadn't seen a soul since I'd left the wizard's castle, which makes the story, by the way, sound a lot better when I say I'd left the wizard's castle. That's with the red-haired damsel in distress left behind. Even better. So should probably call her a princess. She'd hate that. So I stopped and I turned around again because I thought, okay, maybe he ducked away. I still thought maybe somebody was following me and having me on or whatever. But it could be a dangerous situation. Turn around, nobody there, and then get this sort of feeling on my shoulder. And it's not quite like having a heart attack. It's not like, the sort of sudden sharp pain that you would feel. It was like, and I'm familiar with this because I've done it to other people when I was a police officer, you put your hand on somebody's shoulder to spin them around. And that's exactly what it felt like. So I spun around. Nobody there. And it was at that point, and I'm standing right next to the statue of Jesus because I'm in the middle of the bridge. And I'm pretty sure it was Jesus. Yeah, it was Jesus. Who else would be crucified on a bridge in the Czech Republic? It had to be Jesus.
Yeah, it's Jesus.
Yeah, Spartacus was highly unlikely, so it had to be Jesus. And at that point, it's like, whoa. And so it's this kind of series of events that had taken place over, if you had to ask me now, I'd say 5 or 6 minutes, probably. Might have been 10, might have been 5, somewhere in there. And that's when I took off, like the fraidy cat that I am. And I ran. I kind of got lost because I took the wrong turn. I wound up down an even scarier alley. Nothing happened, but I realized I'm in this really dark, narrow, scary alley. And I went, whoa, stop. And I ran back out of that. And if anybody had seen me, they would have been appalled at my lack of courage. But when I finally stopped, near a sign that said the bus to Linz leaves from here or something, I kind of went, and then started to think about it all. But yeah, that's sort of how it happened.
Right,
as I remember it now, sitting here, as I described it in the book, it might be slightly different because I might have forgotten something.
No, that's fine. Did you get yourself a drink? If not, I'm going to go to an ad to give you time to get one.
Oh, that would be, that'd be great, actually.
Okay, we'll come back after this then.
Okay, thanks very much.
The Paranormal Intelligence Gathering Services Ghost Store is a one-stop shop for all of your ghost hunting gadgetry needs. Run by ghost hunters for ghost hunters, the shop is filled with all of the latest in investigation equipment, shipped in from all around the world, from high-quality digital dictaphones to EMF pumps, infrared illuminators to laser grid pens, CCTV equipment to data loggers. All of our equipment has already been imported, so you can buy it safe in the knowledge that there will be no hidden costs. And with our postage promise, you'll never pay more than the actual postage price. So visit www.the-pigs.co.uk/ghost store.
Yeah, welcome back to the KTPF Community Talk Show live on www.ktpf.co.uk. We've been talking to Paul Kimball from Nova Scotia, Halifax, Nova Scotia, whichever way it is, about paranormal interactions. He's the author of The Other Side of Truth, The Paranormal, The Art of the Imagination, and The Human Condition. And we've been talking about all sorts of things regarding the possibility that could be actually interactions with advanced non-human intelligences, including ghosts, time travelers, and aliens. Paul, are you back with us?
I am indeed, with a new glass of Diet Coke.
Oh, you lucky so-and-so. Right, okay, I forgot to get some today. Right, basically, when I was reading about that incident, about the shadow, a thought come across my mind, and I wanted to put it to you to see what you think. Just prior to the time that you actually decide, you sat down in the square and sat there peacefully before you saw the shadow, you'd come across the actual bridge and you decided to play a game with yourself that you normally play now and again, where you look towards the direction you're going. And
that's right, yes.
And imagine yourself, being there, yeah?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I don't know what made me think about it, but I was actually wondering that whilst you were sitting down in the square, could it possibly have been a shadow of you coming across the square, of you going to the shop, and it was your shadow that you saw behind you? If you understand what I mean. Could it be
I do.
a bit of a
I
time
do.
lapse? Could it be a possibility?
In theory, it could be. I don't think it was, for the simple reason that the shadow that I saw in the square appeared in a place that I I'd been there. I'd been there earlier in the day, but I hadn't been there that night. So it was at the far end of the square, and I hadn't walked that far. So it's not like it would have been a place that I had been just 15 seconds beforehand.
Right.
But thank you for reminding me about that, because it is interesting. And there was a reason why I included that part in the story, besides just filling up pages. Excuse me. Because I think that might have been part of me opening myself up to an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because I started thinking, as I was walking along, I was reflecting, as Holly and I had been over dinner earlier, that, the whole idea of when we had chatted, that was where we had chatted, and I'd asked her what her most scary experience was and all that sort of stuff. And it was at dinner earlier that evening. And for your viewers' reference, I was not drunk. I had had one beer, 3 hours earlier, kind of thing, with dinner, and that was it. So I was perfectly sober. And because that would be an important question to ask. Well, Paul, were you drunk? The answer is no. So you can cross that off your list. But I was thinking about it. I was thinking about all of our experiences. I was thinking, because this was our last stop on our trip. We were heading home. We had one more day in Český Krumlov, then we had another day in Prague, and then it was back to Canada. So we'd been and we were done at Ghost Cases. That was it. We had to film one wrap-up episode in studio, but our travels were over. And so I was in a kind of a maudlin mood, but I was also in a very reflective mood, and I was going through it all in my head, and I was opening. And then I started to do this thing where as you say, I sort of try and visualize myself at a spot ahead. If I know I'm going to be walking the Halifax Commons here, it's sort of a square kind of, you guys, everybody has commons, right? A common space where you walk around.
Yeah.
It's right in the center of our city. It's about 3 blocks from my house, so I walk there almost every night. It's about a 2-kilometer walk to get all the way around it. And when I start, this is how I sort of develop this thing. You can picture yourself on the other side of the commons. And I do, and I'll sit there, or I'll stand there rather, and say, all right, I'm going to picture myself over there. And then I'll get to that spot, and I'll look back where I was and see if I can remember, what it was like to be there. And I said, I've just basically time traveled in a sense. But even that very act of trying to even think in a very weird way about time travel, or about just how time works, I think is one of those things where you're opening yourself up to an experience. You're at least willing to consider things outside the norm, which would be you just start your walk and you do your walk and you go home. And you might think about a whole bunch of things, but you wouldn't think about time, space, and the possibility of superhuman or supernatural intelligences interacting with you and that kind of thing. I'm weird. I do. So along with thinking about Bray Wyatt versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania, I think about things like that. So, yeah, in Český Krumlov, all of that was taking place as I was leading into this shadow person experience. Now, there's 2 possible ways I think anyone listening to this can go from that. My skeptical friends, of which I would include myself, would say, well, Paul, you were predisposed. You weren't drunk on alcohol, but you were drunk on memory and feeling and emotion and experience, and you were going through this thing where you were, as you are willing to admit, you were very maudlin and sort of reflecting on everything that happened. You had it all in the forefront of your mind. And so, yeah, you saw a couple of shadows here and there, but your mind processed it in a different way. And some of this, it's not like you made it up, but you kind of made it up. Sure. Or the other possibility is, which my skeptical friends would probably not countenance, is that there really was something there. It presented itself to me in a particular way. And that's because I opened myself up to the possibility if I had just gone on a walk and all I did was, sort of think, oh, well, that's a nice building. Oh, that's a lovely flower. Oh, I got to be back before Holly goes to sleep kind of thing. Then nothing would have happened because I wasn't opening the door. Oh, and there is one other thing. There's a picture of a piece of graffiti in the book that I published, and it's a weird. I hadn't noticed it until the day after, but it's right next to across the street from where the toy store is, where I had this reflection in the mirror or the window, and it's a creepy looking. There's a little more to this story actually than I've told. So it's like a giant all-seeing eye with little arms and sort of little legs. Yeah. And it's really actually quite creepy and frightening. And as I walked back the next day, I was, Holly went off. We separated and went in different directions. And then I ran into this sort of drawing, and I thought, well, that's weird. I was here last night, and this is right. I wonder if there's a history in this city or large town of strange shadow people or creatures or whatever coming up to people. So because it was the last night, really, other than our last night in Prague, Holly and I went out and got completely hammered that evening at a small little dive in the basement of some building called the Horror Bar, with one R. So it's the Horror Bar. But they had a coffin in the middle of the bar. I mean, it's awesome. Before I die, I have to go back because it's just it's awesome place. And there was almost nobody there because it wasn't quite tourist season yet. So it's the best bar I've ever been in because I asked the barmaid, barmaid, that's very 19th century. I asked the lovely young lady who was serving us that night, what time do you close? And she said, well, whenever our last customer leaves. And I thought, this is a very civilized country. I like the Czech Republic. We will be leaving at about 5 a.m, if that's okay with you. And she said, of course, it's fine. And so we kept talking and talking and talking, Holly and I, and we were going through everything that we've experienced. And I didn't tell her at all about the shadow person, but I just unbidden kind of said, so what do you think of Český Krumlov? And she said, it's lovely. I mean, who wouldn't? It's a beautiful town. But she said, I have to admit, it's a little creepy. And I went, well, what do you mean by creepy? And she said, this is a town, if we ever did and we didn't know we weren't going to get a second season of Ghost Cases. We thought we were going to get renewed, actually. So she said, we should come back here. I sense an energy, and when you read the stories in the book, Holly there were certain times when we were doing Ghost Cases, she would have, she was much more sensitive, if you will, than I was.
Yeah.
So she would have sometimes she would almost break down crying. One time she really did break down crying, and I found her in a hallway, and I had to hug her and everything. It's like, well, she just said, I felt bad, I felt weird, I felt sad, whatever. And she said, I feel there's a lot of weird energy in this town. Now that's not something and I'm paraphrasing. And again, memory's moving target because we were drinking, but she did say something like that. And she hadn't said that about any of the other places we've been in the Czech Republic. Only one place in Scotland. We were at a circle of old standing stones on the Isle of Mull, and she felt, as did I, frankly, sort of a presence or whatever. And I just thought, wow, okay, that's odd because nothing in our experience here that you know of would lead you to believe this. So you've clearly felt something, and I was so close to telling her. And I got to tell you, Holly, I didn't just feel something. I experienced something last night, and I did. I thought about it. But, even she kind of felt a vibe about Český Krumlov. So maybe it was just a place where that kind of thing goes on. But I did ask the young lady who was serving us drinks, not the barmaid. I wandered up to the bar, and at one point I sort of said, so, because there were only 3 other guys in the bar. They were 3 loud Americans who eventually wandered off, I think. And there might have been one other, and there was a guy sitting at the bar who I think owned the place. I'm not sure. And so she had a lot of time to spend with us. So she'd come over, and I'd go up, and she was pretty too. So I'm a pretty girl. And I chat with her at the bar, and I said, so is there a history of strange things that happened in Český Krumlov? Because, we're ghost investigators. We do a TV show in Canada and everything, which I might have said to impress her. You never know. Yeah. And, big television star. And she said, oh, yes. She got very serious, and she was like, oh, yes, people see things all the time. She didn't use the word haunted, but again, language. I'm not sure she knew what the word haunted was, but she kind of talked a bit in Czech, and the guy who was sitting at the bar nodded. He was an older fellow, and he nodded. He said, yes, many stories. And I should have, but I was by that point quite lubricated. So I wanted to get back to the table with Holly, but I just thought, okay, maybe we'll come back someday and do a TV show. But they were as soon as I mentioned something, sort of dark and mysterious, they sort of became not less friendly, but it's almost like the old Dracula films, where you'd walk into town and everybody's having a good time at the bar until somebody mentions the castle. Hey, who lives in the castle up on the hill? Oh, what? Well, everybody's quiet. What's going on? And then you hear a scream from the countryside or something. So that's part of the story too that I don't think I really talked. And those are the little details that kind of, fill it in and make it more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Is, the drawing on the wall, which I do speak about in the book, but also just the conversations we had that night in the bar with the bartender, and didn't really converse with the guy sitting at the bar, but he kind of nodded and went erg, and and then didn't really want to talk to me very much at all after that. He avoided me like the plague. And even after that, she was a little, not less friendly. She just came over and spent less time with us.
Yeah.
And we had run into that with a couple other people too. As soon as we would tell them that we were not ghost hunters, but we'd been doing this ghost investigating series or whatever, some people would shy away from us. And I asked somebody once why that was, and they said it's because you have negative energy. Because we think some of these things that have you and one guy actually said you need to be cleansed. So Holly and I had this thing, we were going to go to Peru and take a trip up to the rainforest and do the ayahuasca and have a shaman, because we thought that would be cool.
Yeah.
And then we realized we couldn't afford it. So we actually never got cleansed. Not, as far as I know, I still carry negative spiritual energy from 5 years ago or 6 years ago now, and maybe she does too. But this idea, more than one person said, because of you've put yourself in all these places, you've got the negative as well as the positive, and unless you get that removed, it's going to continue to hover over you. And I used to joke and say, well, hey, that's great, bring it on. The more I thought about it, I thought, perhaps not. Best not to tempt.
The way we cleanse ourselves.
Well, I've got to tell you that is one lovely bar. I want to go. Andy's found a picture of it and put it up.
Yeah, but I must admit, the way we cleanse ourselves, Paul, is we use white sage and we burn it and then just use the smoke.
It's quite strange because white sage you can only get from Canada.
Yes, apparently.
Oh, really?
So you burn it and just use the smoke and sort of like waft it around you.
Kind of banish all negativity.
Yeah, so that's what we use. I
choose that, and that, I actually think that it doesn't, in a sense, really matter what you use.
No.
If you're using something, because it comes back to that movie theater thing.
Yeah.
You're buying a ticket if you really do need to cleanse yourself of something. And I don't think it's evil or anything. I just think maybe it's to, sort of to close the door, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, it's the act of wanting to close the door. I talk about Ouija boards in the book. And I reference two friends in particular, one of whom became my fiance, and the other one is my dearest friend from high school, still my best friend. Both of them had Ouija board experiences. The one that my former fiance, I should say, still my best friend, but that she had when we were in college. I mean, she was a graduate student in English, went on to have has a law degree, one of the most sensible people that I have ever met. Salt of the earth, totally rational, not given to any. That night, she had been playing around with a Ouija board with some of her classmates, and she and I had only been dating for a few months. And I get a call, because I lived in a different residence, a male residence. I get a call from a friend. He calls me from out in the hall, and he says, "Oh, there's a phone call for you. It's your girlfriend. She sounds really upset." It's like, "Oh, okay." It's 2 a.m. So I answer the call. She says, "I got to come down and see you. Can I come?" Yes, of course. I'm glad you thought of me. The relationship is proceeding as I had envisioned it. This is excellent. I'll calm her down, and then, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Anyway, so she comes down, and she is freaked out and tears in her eyes and everything. And the long and the short, I'm still not allowed. We still live together. I'm still not allowed to have a Ouija board in the house.
Yeah.
When we used one for ghost cases, she forbid me from bringing it into the house. And it was because she didn't have her hands on the board at all. The people that she was playing with, her classmates or whatever, had no knowledge of what came out of the Ouija board, that it was saying things that only she knew, and she had not told any of them. And when she tells me that, I believe her. She had no reason to lie then, and she would have no reason to lie now. Plus, I saw her at the time. So years later, I asked a friend of mine who is a minister. I said, "Well, what do you think of Ouija boards?" Because I thought he'd laugh it off. And he said, "Oh, I take them very seriously." I went, "What do you mean you take them very seriously?" You're a religious guy. I thought you'd laugh them off as some goofy paranormal thing. He said, No. I said, "Well, you can buy these Ouija boards at a local department store for $10. They're made out of plastic." He said, Yeah, doesn't matter. It's not the actual board itself. It's you sitting down and saying to whatever's out there, hey, here I am. I'm willing to have a communication with you. And I thought, well, okay, this is a good thing, right? And from my perspective, because I view it all as, at the end of the day, not harmful, even if it's frightening, they're not really meant to harm you. It's just like a scary movie. It's meant to, scare you, but not harm you. He views it differently. He really does believe in heaven and hell and demons and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, imagine it like this. When you open the door, Paul, whether it's the Ouija board or you going out in the ghost cases or any of this stuff, it's like leaving the front door of your house unlocked. Now, it's possible that somebody might walk in who means you no harm. They're very friendly. They're just saying hello. But what are the chances of that happening? Those kind of people tend to ring the bell first. The ones that walk into your house when you leave the door open and don't let you know that they're walking into the house tend to be people who are there to rob you or whatever. And he's right. Generally speaking, people will ring a doorbell or knock before and wait for you to open the door.
Yeah.
Somebody who would just walk in, different story. And I thought, oh, okay. Well, I don't think we ever ran into any demons. But in fact, there's a clip of me up on the internet I put up where I was doing the radio station episode, and I was in the radio station in Manchester, and I sort of said, but, just in case we have run into any demons, I'm telling you, I want you to leave my house, like my sort of psychic house or whatever. Go away. It's a mistake. I didn't invite you in. But, that's Ouija boards. In and of themselves, they're not dangerous at all. They're just pieces of, not even wood. Usually they're pieces of cardboard and plastic, but it's what they symbolize.
Yeah.
So the same thing is true in the sense of the cleansing thing. An ayahuasca trip up the Peruvian into the rainforest, or white sage, or your local minister saying a prayer, or just whatever that act is. It's the act itself, not what you're using.
Yes,
that I think is important.
Andy's got a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, a couple actually. Just going back to the Ouija board thing at the moment. Did a little research recently for an article for our magazine, which I'll make sure you get a copy of. It's only a download. It seems, from what I can gather, that the Ouija boards themselves are only seen to be dangerous, demonic, and evil after the Exorcist film. Prior to that, they weren't taken particularly seriously by anybody, other than being almost like a child's toy. It's only since they were given a very bad rap in that film that people's general attitude towards them has significantly changed. Just a little observation there. But also,
I'm not exactly sure that that's accurate. If you look at not that they were viewed as portals to Demonville or whatever, but spiritualists have been using Ouija boards for close to a century now as a way of trying to open doors. Although I think you're right, or that article is right in the sense that I don't think it's a relatively recent phenomenon that people viewed it as a negative thing.
Yes, that's
if they viewed it at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my point entirely. The attitude towards them changed significantly after that film, because it was portrayed in the film as being the entry point of the demon that possessed the young girl in the film. My other question really was, have you read much of John Keel? He's particularly the Mothman prophecies, the idea again of that sort of third space for these, whatever they are, whether they're aliens or ghosts or whatever. That he seems to hold similar ideas, although sometimes a bit more out there, should we say. But I just wonder if you actually read or heard of John Keel.
The truth is, I have heard of John Keel. My friend Greg, who I've mentioned earlier, is a big fan, I guess is the best way. He has a signed book by Keel. I've never read a book by Keel. I don't really have any inclination to read any of Keel's books. Because to me, Keel was, sometimes I get in trouble with people in the paranormal world because I say things like this, but I just don't think he was very credible. I think Keel, in a lot of cases, was making stuff up, and he was saying things, to sell books and to get an audience. And I think that the ideas that he raised are interesting ideas, some of them, but they're much more honestly and more intellectually valid folks who have raised them. You get Jacques Vallée in the UFO world. Jacques Vallée I'd go to Jacques Vallée before I'd go to Keel. In fact, I'd go to a lot of people before I'd go to Keel, like everyone. And this is one of those things that my good friend Greg and I disagree on. He's a big fan of Keel's. I am not. I don't hold it against anybody who is, because some of the things that he talks about are, in fact, interesting. It's just Keel himself that I'm not a fan of, and I don't particularly trust all of his motivations when he was alive. So, he's not a source that I turn to. But
Sure.
if other people do, then that's perfectly fine.
No, I kind of agree with you there that I think sometimes his conclusions in a bit don't necessarily fit what he's presented to us in his books. I mean, the Moth and Prophecies I found fascinating as a case. I mean, his interpretation, again, a lot of the stuff in the book is presented very matter of fact, and you think, oh, hold on a minute, that's a bit extreme. Could you perhaps explain further what you mean by that? But no, I just wondered if you had an opinion on that. That's fair enough.
It was a book? Oh, I thought it was only the movie with Richard Gere. No, I'm just kidding. No,
well, Paul.
There was a book? Wow.
Talking of books, Paul, I'm hoping to get a signed copy. You said you'd send me one, so I'm hoping it'll be a signed copy.
Tell you what, I'll send all three of you a copy, although you're going to have to wait a little while. I don't have any actually sitting here. They're all, they're ordered out of Amazon and shipped directly. So if you want a signed copy, I'll order them for myself and then ship them over.
Two will do, because me and my husband will share it.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Consider it done.
Me and Steve will share it, so that's not a problem. But as I say, just put to Steve and Sue. But as I say, it's been great having you on, Paul. It's been brilliant listening to you about what you feel and your theories and everything. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
No, I really appreciate you folks inviting me, and actually I've been watching you the whole time, which is kind of freaky, because I have the KTPF sort of website up so I can see you. There, you just see. I can see you guys. There's the thumbs up there and everything. So that's.
That's cool.
I can't see Andy, I guess.
No, you won't see Andy. Andy's actually down in Essex, so he's just on Skype.
I was actually in the studio last week, Paul. So it was our 3rd anniversary show, so I came up for the weekend. You would have seen me, but you haven't missed much. Don't worry.
Well, there's a reasonably good chance I'll be in the United Kingdom this summer, because I am shooting a new feature film in June, July, and when that's done, I'd like to go over and visit my British partners and do some business. And I've been saying to everybody that I know in the UK, from Steve to Dave and now to you folks everywhere, if I'm in your neck of the woods, I'd love to stop by and say hello in person. That
would be brilliant, Paul. Please keep in touch.
Certainly.
But
all of us being big Peterborough fans, of course.
Peterborough fans. But as I say, you've just mentioned that you are doing that. Is that your next project, or are you working on one now?
Well, I'm working in the sense that we're in very early pre-production. So we start shooting in mid-June, and it'll go until mid to late July here in Canada.
Uh-huh.
And it's a feature film.
Right.
I did 2 last year, and I have 1 this year. And it's what I do for a living. So. And
any books that are on the horizon or just come out?
I actually, not for me, but I will be publishing a book in May or June, depending on when I get the edit on it done, by Nick Redfern, who's a good friend of mine.
Dear old Nick.
On the Men in Black.
Oh, right.
So, which is sort of shadowy people. There you go. So a little bit, what is it? The Strange Tales of the Men in Black, I think is the title. I think so. Mm-hmm. And it's basically what Nick did is compiled a series of stories from other people. So and he offers some commentary and some editorial opinion, and an introduction. But basically, it's a story of first-person accounts from people who've told these stories to Nick. And no offense to Nick, I quite like Nick's books.
Yeah.
And we've actually been on the road together, and he in Puerto Rico hunting in quotation marks at chupacabra and stuff. So we've done a lot of fun things together. But I like reading other people's books when they're either describing their own personal experience, and Nick's had a few of those, or when they're relating direct experiences by somebody else.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 types of paranormal books that I like reading. There is a 3rd type, which is, sort of, say, a book by Richard Dolan, the history of the UFOs and stuff like that. And I'm not as much a fan of stuff like that.
No.
I usually find they're poorly written. I want to hear the personal stories. I want to hear the people who've actually had things happen to them.
Yeah.
Because those are the ones that I relate to. That's where the truth lies.
Yeah. Okay, and are you still doing your own radio show on the internet?
Good heavens, no. It's weird. Sadly enough, I just don't ever find the time to do it. And you know what? I ran out of people I wanted to talk to.
Oh, right.
And I probably will find – now I could go talk to Greg or my friend Aaron Gullius. Like I could keep talking to them. But eventually there's – I've done it. Like we all agree. We've had 3 or 4 episodes between Paul and Greg. I mean, until we actually have something new to say, what's the point?
Do you find that there's I'm finding it hard for people to take over the reins from somebody else. Like for instance, say Nick, for instance, if he was an older generation, people to take over where he left off, because I don't think there's a lot of it these days.
It is true. The weird thing, and I guess maybe I can leave your listeners. Oh, I'm only missing the WrestleMania pre-show, as long as I don't miss the Undertaker. Because it's my big paranormal match tonight. The one thing that I think with the paranormal, and I've seen this in particular in ufology, in the UFO subject, but it's true in the ghost and the Bigfoot thing and everything else.
Yeah.
People are lacking in two things. They are sorely lacking in a sense of humor, and especially about themselves. Although you folks in the United Kingdom are a little different. You, for whatever reason, it's the post-imperial thing. You've sort of realized that you're not the greatest thing since sliced bread, and the empire has fallen. So you're a little more fun-loving, and you don't take yourselves quite as seriously as you did, say, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Whereas in the United States, which is really the center of most of the paranormal media industry, so most of the ghost shows come out of the U.S., most of the UFO shows come out of the U.S., most of the ufologists, frankly, are in the U.S., and most of the major ghost hunters, if you will, are there. Totally lacking in a sense of humor about it all. And the other thing that they're lacking is a sense of imagination and wonder. I once said to a prominent ufologist, who I won't name, who was yabbering on to me about the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And he was like, this case, and this case, and this case, and this case. And I said, ufologist, well, okay, but you don't sound like this is a whole lot of fun. And he went, well, it's not fun. This is serious. There's a government conspiracy, and it's, he used Stan Friedman's phrase, the cosmic Watergate, and this is, lies on the ground, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, that's not what it is. Even if I'm going to assume for a second that there are space aliens coming here, think about that. There are space aliens coming here. Far more interesting and fun and imaginative than any lies we could cook up. And who cares about a government conspiracy and all that stuff? There are freaking space aliens coming to Earth. How cool is that? And I said, it'd be a lot easier for you to get people to come to your conferences and to get people to buy your books, if that's what you're into, if you would step back and say, hey, folks, this is freaking cool. This is like the gee whiz factor. But they don't. They get all serious. And the only people at the end of the day, if you go to conferences now in the United States, especially with UFOs, you don't see young people. One or two, maybe. Yeah. It's 50, 60, 70 years old. It's almost like a religious revival thing. They're singing the same old hymns. They're telling the same old stories. Yeah. And it's really dull. You know what churches, and I use a religious example, the churches that have grown in the United States and around the world, really, in the last 50 years that have revitalized religion are the more charismatic ones. Let's sing, because the old churches presented God as a deadly dour, and there's something to be said for. I love Gregorian chant. I love high church stuff. It has its own art form. But you know what? If he's God, he's really cool. He inspired Paul McCartney, and he inspired the Sex Pistols as much as he inspired Beethoven, if you believe in that kind of thing. Yeah. So let's try and get young people in, because the older stuff is great for the older folks. That's cool. But we got to get the younger people into the churches. Some churches have embraced that and been very successful. Ufology is not. Ghost hunting has not. Even those television shows, it's so tech-oriented, it's so serious, it's dull. And that's one of the things that I took out of doing ghost cases that we've been criticized for on Amazon Prime. Again, because I can read the reviews. Yeah. And they say, a couple of people actually quite like it. They got it. I'm sure they're British, frankly. But most of the people who are reviewing, I think, are from the United States. And they're not taking it seriously. This is serious. Why aren't they taking it seriously? Well, we did take it seriously. We just never took ourselves seriously. And that was the difference between us and ghost hunters. Because I don't think they take the subject seriously, but I think they take themselves seriously.
Okay.
And I'm the exact opposite. I take the subject seriously. I just don't take myself seriously.
Yeah.
And if you can't have a little fun with it, you're never going to get young people interested.
No.
And you know what? I don't even think you meant that as a question. So I'm sorry I've gone
No,
10 minutes
I
on
did,
a tirade. But it actually, it's one of the things that really bothers me is that there aren't more young
me.
people.
I'll be honest with you, it does bother me. So, but thanks again for being on the show. I don't want to keep you from your wrestling too long. So
No,
I'm
thank
going to let you go.
I've overstayed my welcome, but thank you again for having me on. Thanks to the folks who are listening.
Hope
Folks
to meet
can
up
always
with you.
contact me at my website or my email if they want to ask me questions or something.
And I hope to meet up with you sometime this year.
That'd be great.
Speak to you soon. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Goodbye.
Cheerio, Paul.
Bye. Well, that was Paul Kimball. Lovely conversation there. Covered quite a few things there, didn't we, Andy?
Certainly did, absolutely, yes.
Quite
And
a
I
few
say,
things
I can only repeat myself and say I agreed with so much that he was saying. He really did. It was however he's reached his conclusions. I'm going to have to read the book, obviously, but we certainly seem to have reached the same place. An agreement that we can't categorize these things as being a ghost or a UFO, or that it is evidence of something, and that something may be sum total of us, directly from us, or could be something external to us, but he's not prepared to say, and I agree, we don't really ultimately know, but no, I really like what he had to say.
Yeah. It was
Still
brilliant.
think Undertaker's going to beat Bray, whatever his name is.
Pardon?
I still think the Undertaker's going to win. So.
Right, well, just to let you know what's coming on next week, John Blackburn's going to be in the studio, in the hub, not the studio. It's a studio, it's
right
a hub.
here.
Right here, from Mysteria Paranormal. He's going to update us on what life is like living with the youngish man. I think it's taken over his life a little bit more than what he expected, and where he feels his future journey is going to take him. Plus, we have Sean Cadman from Past Hauntings, who's going to be on via Skype talking about his group and experiences. So, more on the paranormal next week regarding investigations and ghosts and stuff like that. So, that could be interesting. And on the subject of this sort of thing, paranormal, witchcraft and magic, Man, Myth and Magic is a specialist of second-hand books on a range of topics from paranormal to witchcraft and magic, as I said. A specialist second-hand occult and esoteric book site which also specialises in paganism, alternative religions, mysticism, earth mysteries, folklore, the supernatural, and archaeology and ancient history. If you would like to see more details on that, visit manmythandmagic.com. And so that's basically our guest for tonight. We're going to be going over to Andy very shortly to discuss some mysteries and conspiracy files. But before then, I'm going to give you the events. Fed up of wading through the activities and events that other advertisers include? Find just what you're looking for at paranormaleventsforyou.com, your one-stop paranormal directory. Well, first up, on the 4th of April, Easter weekend next week, there's a charity ghost hunt at Clough Nurseries, Rotherham. On the 4th, 5th and 6th, there is the Bohemian Bazaar, which will open its doors at the Grand Pavilion in Matlock, Bath, where you'll find alternative stalls such as holistic therapies, Reiki healing, bamboo massage, etc., plus pagan Gothic giftware, homemade arts and crafts, plus lots more, including some unusual and unique items. On the 17th of April, there's a ghost hunt at the Jamaica Inn in Cornwall, and you can find out more by visiting jamaicainn.co.uk. On the 18th and 19th, we're back at the Grand Pavilion in Matlock for the Bohemian Bazaar. And on the 19th of April, there's a ghost hunt at the Stalk Hotel in Wigan. On the 25th of April, there is a Clitheroe Ghost Walk and also up Pendle Hill. And Derek Acora is still doing his Psychic Ether Tour, and it continues on the following dates. On the 2nd of April, he's at the Civic Centre, Rotherham. On the 8th of April, he's at the Theatre Breconnark in Brecon, if that's right. 9th of April, he's at the Congress Theatre, Combran. My Welsh is not very good. 24th of April is at the Gresley Old Hall in Swaddlington Coat. On the 29th of April is at the Tenpentrey Football Club in Mid Glamorgan. Also, there's Tony Stockwell continuing his tour throughout the UK. On the 20th of April is at the Ross Hall in Fife. 21st, with Whitehall Theatre, Dundee. 22nd, Regal Community Theatre, Bathgate. 23rd, Strathclyde Suite in Glasgow, Royal Concert Hall. 28th, Camberley Theatre, Camberley. 29th, Millfield Theatre, Edmonton. And on the 30th, Epsom Playhouse. For more details on these and other events, visit paranormaleventsforyou.com. Paranormaleventsforyou.com also offers banner advertising for only £10 per year. See our website for more details. Paranormaleventsforyou.com, your one-stop paranormal directory. Yeah, and that's the events that are on paranormaleventsforyou.com. And if you want to advertise your events, just pop along and join the website, and you can add your events for free. Please remember not to include prices, as remember collaboration, not competition. And but make sure you put your URL for your website so that people can visit and find out more about your event. Okay, Andy, are you back?
Oh yes, I'm here.
Oh, he's back. Just to let you know that the KTPF Community Talk Show is is supported by Phenomena Magazine and Beyond Parazine, which are also available online. And on the subject of magazines, the KTPF magazine is out now, and you can either read online or download your own copy via our website at www.ktpf.co.uk. Just hit Online Magazine, which you will find on our menu bar or on the panel on the right-hand side. We are always looking for contributions from people within these subjects of the paranormal, and also showcasing groups and highlighting haunted venues. So if you're interested in contributing to the KTPF magazine, then send your article to publisher@ktpf.co.uk. If you're listening, if you like what you're listening to, then don't forget to follow us via Facebook or Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you will find all our past shows dating back to 2012. And now, it's time for Andy's Mysteries and Conspiracy Files. Andy, what do you got for us this week?
I've got a few interesting little cases. I thought I'd start off with this one that's kind of almost back to front in terms of being a mystery, because it's demonstrating what is not a mystery. Experts using fake monsters to test how people report encounters with mythical creatures. Charming. Experts have been using fake monsters to test how people report encounters with mythical creatures. One exercise saw one person unleashed in a popular Edinburgh attraction dressed in a gorilla suit as part of a study to see how people react to the so-called Bigfoot sightings. Now, there's a problem with this is, as far as I know, there's never been a Bigfoot sighting in Edinburgh. So when people think it was Bigfoot, they're going to think, that's a man in a gorilla suit. He's obviously got lost or something. But anyway, the experts have also used props and costumes to create other beasts. The team from the University of St Andrews, Fife, are keeping tight-lipped about their research until it's published in a scientific journal. But Dr. Charles Paxton, a research fellow and statistical ecologist at the university, explained that it's a serious study. Will help this team's statistical pattern in accounts of weird and wonderful sightings. He admitted, people think it's a bit odd, until I explain what I'm doing. I'm having trouble speaking today. I really am. The Bigfoot experiment took place in the Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh. I mean, who's going to think that's Bigfoot in the Royal Botanic Garden? You know, even like the wilds of the sort of top mountains somewhere in the Outer Hebrides, it may be, but the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh, no one's going to think that's Bigfoot. Anyway, they chose the venue as it is approximately 50 giant redwoods, similar to those that adorn the forests where such sightings are generally reported. Yeah, I don't get it. So what? It's still Edinburgh. He said, it's like the area where you get the reports of Bigfoot. There are other experiments that have also involved fake monsters. The garden's visitors were told that they were taking part in an experiment beforehand. So what's the point? I just don't get it. I mean, I read this earlier and I thought, well, I don't get the point of this. Part of it is that we're all told they were taking part in an experiment beforehand. So you're pre-warning them they're going to see something strange. So, of course, they're going to see something strange.
I don't know.
One group were told to look out for Bigfoot and was sent on the route that would bring them to the fake gorilla interview. Anyway, so I thought, I'm not entirely sure what they were trying to prove in this experiment, because you're preloading the witnesses, you're putting it in a completely strange place where everyone's going to think that doesn't make sense anyway. So it just doesn't make sense to me at all.
Well, it would make more sense if they did it with things that were native to this country.
Well, exactly, or something that was a bit more out of the way somewhere. They've also done experiments with diverse ranges such as UFOs and Nazi flying saucers, Bigfoot, and the evolution of sea monsters. But the academics maintain that they aren't just monkeying around. Their approximating projects have sound scientific methods and aims. Dr. Paxman previously catalogued all known sightings of the Loch Ness Monster to look for consistencies or patterns which could be explained by natural phenomena. So these are obviously trying to disprove things. It's a serious study of people reporting things, he said. I'm trying to see if there are statistical patterns. All my work gets published in a proper scientific journal. There we go. And all I do is aim to get proper results. Fair enough. Can you hold 2 seconds, guys? I've got a very dry throat, as you probably can tell.
Okay, don't worry.
We'll
talk amongst ourselves.
While you're quenching your thirst, something I just found flying around the internet, which is quite a coincidence. In New York, a woman saved a little boy's life, giving him CPR after being hit in the chest with a baseball bat.
Oh, God.
About 7 years later, in 2006, that very same boy saved her life from choking to death doing the homing maneuver when she was in a restaurant that he worked in.
Oh, God, that's a coincidence.
Isn't it? As it is a big coincidence. That's kind of paying it forward, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Are we back then, mister?
I'm back alive and well. Sorry about that. My throat just completely clogged up. I think because I hadn't really said an awful lot the last hour and a half. Yeah, it's strange. Anyway, here's my second one. Thanks for Sue for this one, but I thought I had to put this up. UFO sightings in Cannock Chase, no less. Good old Cannock Chase, if you know all about. And it opens up, I can read it. UFO sightings in Cannock Chase as hundreds report. Oh, it disappeared. Come back. Where's he gone? Hundreds report loud noises from the sky. And then you scroll down, there's a familiar face that we have seen before.
Yes.
And it was exactly the same photograph of a certain Mr. Brickley. Anyway, a strange aircraft spotted moving slowly and loudly across the night sky in Cannock has sparked UFO frenzy. Hundreds of householders who took to social media after first hearing a loud drone, then spotting the massive object move slowly across over their homes. Many believe that there's a strange earthly explanation for a close encounter that has the community buzzing. Locals in the Staffordshire town believe they saw a secret military prototype, possibly a US aircraft carrier currently stationed. From an aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier? Bloody hell, that's got to be. Stationed just off Portsmouth. And the British UFO Research Association not discounted claims that the drone might be behind the rush of reports. The area has been a UFO hotbed since the early 1980s, but last week's incident is the biggest in terms of the sheer volume of sightings. Shortly after the X-Files incident at around 9 p.m. on Tuesday, Facebook's sites were awash with details of the UFO alert. One individual posted, "My house was rumbling, and I'm still shaking. It was slow and it was huge." Another wrote, "Way too slow for fighter jets. It flew directly over our houses, made the sharp turn left and carried on." The craft sporting 3 red lights. Now, it doesn't say there's a pattern to the shape of the 3 red lights, but if it's triangular, it's all too familiar. The 3 light was low, and many feared it was a plane in trouble. Paranormal investigator Lee Brickley, I wonder if I've heard that name before, witnessed it himself. Of course he did. The same phenomenon began blogging as the drama unfolded. He described the thunderous rumbling like World War II bomber. Before anything could be seen with the naked eye, there was a deep, very loud droning. After around 3 minutes, the craft came into sight. It seemed incredibly large and astonishingly low in the sky, and 3 red lights were easily noticeable. The UFO travelled very slowly, and many people thought it was about to crash. Lee claims you could still hear the growl of the engines after the mystery machine had disappeared. Mechanic journalist Hannah Hiles, who works for the Sunday Mercury, also alerted to the thunderous noise. It was ever so loud. It went on for quite a while, she said. It was much more prolonged than a military jet. It was very curious. Another resident described the sound of jets following a loud whir akin to propellers. Propellers, eh? Maybe. The reports, and Lee still collecting them, have spawned 3 theories. Members of the public did see something from another planet, or they witnessed a plane in distress, or they saw an experimental military craft, the so-called Black Project, being tested over Staffordshire. The other one I suddenly thought to myself earlier on was the akin to propellers. I'm wondering if it was maybe something like a Chinook or a couple of Chinook helicopters flying over, because they obviously make a lot of noise. And in a dark sky with just small lights on, they may have looked like one object. So I don't know. Anyway, Lee added, I've checked online with flight tracking services and have concluded it would be impossible for this to have been a plane in trouble. There simply weren't any flights in the area at that specific time. I also contacted Birmingham Airport to make sure, and they confirmed that none of the flights leaving or arriving at the airport experienced issues that would have led them to fly so low. So there we go. I don't know if I'm going to read the rest of this, but yeah. So there we go. A UFO with a Canuck chase, and a certain person who's often seems to be
saying that,
kind of
I know you haven't read it, but a number of recent UFO alerts have turned out to be drones, according to Bafura, which take a sceptical view of alien claims revealed, and that could well be the explanation for Tuesday's mass sighting. One spokesman said, I'm sure it's something it can be explained. Whether it will be explained is another matter. There are so many drones around, which I agree there are, aren't there?
Well, would they make that kind of noise if it was a loud droning sound?
Really don't know.
Unusual. Anyway, that's I cannot chase. Here's my next one. Okay, now I suppose.
So what else have we got?
It's coming up. Just my computer's doing strange things, isn't it? There we go. It's one of those nights I was not half asleep listening to it, but I was so sort of engrossed I kind of forgot what I was doing listening to Paul earlier. Okay, UFO conspiracy theorists claim to have seen 9-foot aliens on the space shuttle. A London UFO conspiracy theorist, Clark McClelland. Now, have you ever heard of Clark McClelland?
No.
I don't think I'd ever heard of Clark McClelland either. Anyway, who has claimed that a NASA veteran has said that he saw a 9-foot alien on the space shuttle. McClelland has maintained the truth of this story despite being dismissed by skeptics as delusional and never having worked for NASA, the Mirror reported. McClelland has posted a video on conspiracy website Paranormal Crucible as a testimony, which shows the plus-size entity interacting with the US NASA astronaut in the bay of the shuttle, while they allegedly monitored the unspecified top-secret mission from Kennedy Space Center on Cape Canaveral, Florida. He added that he saw the alien for 1 minute and 7 seconds, so he obviously sat there and timed it on his watch. Picture posted on his website shows him and Judy Resnick, the second ever female astronaut who died in 1986 Challenger spaceship disaster alongside 6 others. McClelland has claimed that the US government has taken off its petition and made shocking claims that aliens have infiltrated the government on Earth. There we go. In the video, he recorded on Earth recently. Sorry, this is not good English, is it? It's not my imagination, is it? This is not good English. Recently by a paranormal website Inquisitor. It isn't me. It is badly put together.
I must admit, it is India.com.
I have come to the conclusion that a lot of these so-called journalists haven't got a clue how to write things down.
I know. I'm sort of struggling trying to think, am I gone mad or something? I just can't read tonight. But it's just the.
I'm actually disappointed you didn't put the other link up.
He hasn't finished yet.
No, the original link that we saw.
Yeah.
It looked like it had a Klingon warbird over
Oh yes.
right next to the space shuttle.
Yes.
I don't know. So what's your next one, or was that your last one?
No, oh God, no. No, don't worry about that. I've got a few here. Right. Oh, no, don't do that. just having a good day. They're really not.
Oh dear.
Disappearing off the face of the earth. Right, there we go. Right, look at that. Look at this rubbish, and I'll read it to you in a couple of minutes. As usual, I managed to find a story relating to Mars. It seems to become a regular feature of my stuff now, stories to do with Mars. But this time we have apparently a giant UFO.
That looks
Mars,
like a plate warmer. With a
it may
lid.
well be, actually. Mars anomaly hunters have discovered a giant UFO flying saucer. And why have they put that? A giant UFO flying saucer. It's a UFO or a flying saucer. It doesn't be both. Anyway, abandoned on the rugged Martian terrain. The latest UFO to find on the red spot was reported on the 27th of March by two YouTube anomaly hunters. One of them, which is the Mars Moon Space Photo Zoom Club, and the Paranormal Crucible again. We've heard them before. As mentioned just now. According to MMSPZC, the UFO flying saucer was discovered in images of the Martian region called the Aram Chaos. And it gives the coordinates for it there.
I would like to disagree with them.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at the picture.
Yes.
And it looks like a speaker.
Oh, yeah. So
Speaker code, doesn't it? Not a flying saucer.
No, it's a speaker that
There's a giant speaker on Mars. AC/DC's coming.
On wide-frame context, NASA MOC image of the Aram Chaos region coordinates are here. The narrow arrows are white image are below. Gigapan images of the UFO flying saucer discovered by zooming in on the MOC image of the Aram Chaos region are provided by NASA researcher Neville Thompson and may be viewed here. Now, if you look down, there is the very wide scale image, and you can't just make it out in the middle. But the problem with this is there is no way of getting any sense of size. I mean, that thing, if you scroll down further, they've actually colorized the photograph slightly. The Martian landscapes are kind of a sepia color, with the object kind of turned grey. But there's absolutely no way of judging how big it's supposed to be. I mean, it could be inches across, it could be miles across. There's no way of knowing. Anyway, according to the MMSPZC, the flying saucer is a detail of a section of the Martian terrain, 23 kilometers tall and about 3 kilometers wide. How do they know that? Do they get out there with the register, with the ruler rod? UFO hunters thus estimate the flying saucer to be about 200 to 300 meters in diameter. Again, how do they know that? There's nothing to give you scale here. No. Anyway, the MMSPZC.
Oh, guesswork, isn't it?
Absolutely. You need to think of a shorter name for their organisation, for God's sake. Conclude that they have this Mars orbiter camera image is evidently a massive flying saucer, a UFO flying saucer. Going by the claims of Mars Anomaly and other UFO hunters, they may speculate on why such a massive UFO was abandoned on the Martian surface. Judging from the luster of the metallic surface, and I have to tell you it's metallic. It does not look like it's been there for very long. They may thus imagine a scenario in which the recent alien visitors were found to have abandoned the spacecraft after it developed a mechanical or electronical fault. This is such speculation upon speculation, isn't it? First of all, they can't tell us really what size it is, but they've come up with a size for it. They've also given up a reason why it's even there.
Yeah, I have the same problem with Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
I mean, they have some good stuff on there, but then they go, E.T.s. It's like, where the hell did that one come from?
Absolutely. There's often the problem. They find something interesting, but they deduce all sorts of additional concepts, possibilities, and beliefs based on a very small amount of evidence. So yes, I can certainly take that on board. But that was speculation upon speculation of this giant UFO object. But anyway, moving on to a slightly more serious one, which is more in the realms of conspiracy, which I always find quite fascinating. This is actually not a new news story. It came out a little while ago, but it was hardly mentioned anywhere. But I thought this was fascinating. Just post up the link and have a look. There it is. There we are. There we go. UK man wins court case against BBC for 9/11 World Trade Center 7 cover-up. Peter Rook refused to pay a TV license fee because the BBC intentionally misinterpreted facts about the 9/11 attacks, he alleged. It is widely known that the BBC reported the collapse of the World Trade Center Building 7 over 20 minutes before it occurred. Now, it says here, widely known. I must admit, I hadn't heard of this before, but continue. World Trade Center 7 was a 47-story skyscraper that was not hit by a plane on 9/11, but collapsed in free fall speed later that day. Now, the interesting thing is, if you're looking at the website I've put the link to, look at the picture and you'll see what this is about. Because the story is actually reporting there, has also collapsed. If you read what this actually says, the 47-story Solomon Brothers building close to the World Trade Center has also collapsed. Next to the woman's head is an arrow pointing at World Trade Center 7, the building that's supposed to have collapsed. Clearly it hasn't. So what on earth are the BBC talking about? Actually showing the building in the background, the reporter saying it's collapsed, and it clearly hadn't collapsed. So Rook said that the BBC have had prior knowledge of a terror attack, making it complicit in the attack. He presented the BBC footage to the judge along with a slew of other evidence, and the judge agreed that Rook had a reasonable case to protest. Rourke was found not guilty and was not fined for failure for paying the licence fee. For all intents and purposes, a UK court has just ruled that the BBC was complicit in the September 11th attacks on the United States. Fantastic. A small victory, but a huge symbolic victory for one you would never have otherwise have heard of. So I suggest that you, the reader, get to the word out on this one. So here I am. And spread it far and wide if you can. So I thought that was really interesting. It is a bit of a mystery, World Trade Center 7. Just to recap quickly, so we all know what we're talking about. September 11th attacks, of course, onto two buildings of the World Trade Center, the two tall buildings. But they were just two of a number of buildings that formed the World Trade Center. Other buildings around them also form part of that. I think it's something like 10 or 12 buildings form the World Trade Center. World Trade Center 7, or the Solomon Brothers building, one floor apparently was given away to the CIA for records. Now, that building was not touched or hit by anything. It wasn't damaged by fire initially, and yet suddenly, almost out of the blue, it apparently collapses. And as you can see in this image here, you have the BBC reporter, BBC World reporter, reporting live, saying that the building has also collapsed. Yet you can clearly see, and I've checked on other images, the buildings in the background, not collapsed. So you have to wonder, how on earth did they have that information? Where did it come from? Now, I do remember somewhere Dick Cheney made a similar statement and then quickly withdrew it about him having to forcibly collapse World Trade Center 7. He claimed it was misrepresented in what he'd actually said, but pardon me, in the interview footage, it does sound like he's saying we've had to collapse the building for some unknown reason, again suggesting it was a deliberate collapse of the building, whereas the others, I certainly believe, were definitely terrorist aircraft being flown into them. I don't think it's a conspiracy there. There's something amiss about this building, and say this was hardly reported anywhere, but yet I think this is an important fact that we do have a court case against our beloved BBC, but stating that there was somehow prior knowledge going on, and the court and the judge accepted that evidence. So, what do you think of that, guys?
Yeah, well, they obviously had prior evidence of that one building. I don't know about the others, but me and you watched a video of that building, didn't we? And you could clearly see explosions going up the side of the building. Remember, that's the same building.
Yeah.
So it was deliberately collapsed because the CIA had the top floor.
Yes, I mean, the only explanation that I have heard that tried to explain otherwise was that they thought the building was in danger of collapsing, so they decided to cause a controlled collapse in order to prevent it falling over onto other people, onto other buildings, so it would fall straight down. But again, if that's the case, fair enough, but there's not been ever been put forward publicly as being the reason. There's never been a proper explanation for the way or the reason why World Trade Center 7 collapsed, other than, as I say, that it was for some safety reasons. So I do find that one particularly interesting. As I say, I will go on the record and say I don't think there was a conspiracy other than the reality of what happened in the World Trade Center. I do believe it was Al-Qaeda followers hijacking planes and crashing them in. I don't think there was any government involvement, any of that kind of thing. But this World Trade Center 7 mystery is a mystery, shall we say. There we go. And finally, as always, just have to have, if I'm not going to work, which won't work now, of course, nothing works for me tonight, I'm having a brain seizure, everything's falling apart. Oh dear. Can I go home now? I can't even get this. Oh, come on!
You are home.
There we go, right. Video, YouTube time, silly video of the week. There's a fantastic UFO. You have to give it a second or two to reveal itself.
I like your silly videos.
Yeah, this one's actually French, I think. I don't know. No, I have to watch this. Let's see if you can spot the UFO. Oh, look, there it is. Whoa! That's really, really, really believable UFO there. I can see. It's like, wow. And I've got this on camera now. Look at this.
Is this your silly photo one?
This is the video of the week. Yeah.
Right.
Video. Can you see it?
That is one cool craft.
Yes, absolutely. Totally real, isn't it? You really believe that's sitting there right in front of me. Oh, look, it's off. Oh, no, he's flown away. Oh, he's gone now. Oh, look, there it is in the sky.
Remote control.
Whoa.
What's it?
That's like a lot of big monsters thing on the ground going around and a bit of CGI afterwards.
That is well done. That is brilliant. That's
one of my favourites so far, I think. And that's my nightmare over for this week. To talk.
Do what?
I just lost the ability to talk tonight. It's just like, that doesn't want to work.
I seem to be the only one whose mouth is working properly.
I don't know. But it's all been tweeted and my phone's been going AWOL because of it. I've just noticed something here. Remember when we had Guy Playfair, Lion Playfair on?
Yes.
I've just noticed that according to Sky Never Miss, the Enfield Poltergeist is actually coming on TV.
Ooh.
May 2015.
All right.
So
that's the series, yeah.
Yeah, if you've got Sky Never Miss,
it'd be a three-part drama.
If you got Sky, then log into that and click on that you never miss it. From the directors of The Killing comes a chilling new three-part drama based on real-life events. An award-winning cast including Timothy Spall, Matthew McFadden, and Juliet Stevenson star in the Enfield Haunting, coming soon to Sky Living. And there's actually a video I've just put on there. So from Sky Living's FB page. So it's on its way.
That would be interesting. The other one that's supposed to be being made, of course, is The Exorcist. Sort of bringing us back to the beginning almost.
Yeah, again.
10-part series, I think, something like that, mini-series.
Right. So, well, that's basically it for tonight then, guys. Again, another great show, another great guest. So don't forget, if you would like to be on the show, then email us at admin@ktpf.co.uk. We are always open to discuss any specific area of this genre, including ghosts, monsters, psychic phenomena, or other supernatural and unexplained mysteries. Remember, this is your show too, so we want you to get involved. We hope you've enjoyed tonight's show and look forward to having your company again next Sunday at 8 p.m. on www.ktpf.co.uk. Thank you for listening to the KTPF Community Talk Show, supported by Phenomena Magazine and on Parazine, and sponsored by
Dragonos Castle, South Wales, one of the most haunted castles in Wales. For more information on ghostly and ghastly events, including Fright Nights, all-night investigations, and hen parties, visit www.mosthauntedcastle.com.
Yeah, don't forget next week we've got John Blackburn on from Mysteria Paranormal and Sean Cadman from Past Hauntings, talking of all things ghost hunting. And just want to remind you that our KTPF magazine is still out, and it's been out just over a week, and it has quite good reviews. And so please log on to our pop onto our website and download it and have a look for yourself. You can tell us what you think. Andy, thank you very much for tonight.
No, don't thank me. I was rubbish.
You're getting ready for your holiday, I think, your little break.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
To speak for a little while there. Read.
I don't know.
I think it's the first time you've actually had a guest that you completely agree with.
Yeah, absolutely. I was genuinely struggling trying to think of a question. There was a couple of things that came to me, and it's like the synchronicity he was talking about. As it came to me, bloody answered them. I thought, oh well, never mind. He's reading my mind. And of course, the other little mild synchronicity there was you were going to ask about the Kermit the Frog impression.
Yes, I was. And it was there.
There it was.
It wasn't a takeoff, was it really?
Oh,
No.
look at that. Yeah.
And then he went and mentioned Peterborough.
And then he went and mentioned Peterborough, Manchester
Right.
City, which we're not far from, Peterborough, which we moved up from. So
I say that Adrian Durham on Talk Sport actually detests Arsenal, and he's a Peterborough fan.
is
So,
he?
there you go. Continuing
Well,
connections.
we just moved up from there. That's all I can say. I've got family there, but that's about it. Well, anyway, until next time, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from her.
And good night from them.
And all we can is left to say is remember to keep the
paranormal
paranormal friendly.
friendly.
Good night and
Good
God
night,
bless.
everyone.
Good night.
This is where it's at.
To see in the night, to measure the spike, to see how cold it's been. I buy my kit so I won't forget the ghosties that I have seen. The Paranormal Intelligence Gathering Services Ghost Store. So visit www.the-pigs.co.uk/ghost store.